Good evening, listeners. Welcome to Noir Intellect. I'm your host, Victor Blackwood. If you enjoy mysteries, hidden clues, and uncovering the truth, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Leave it in the comments below. Now, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. The mystery begins now. Chapter 1. The invitation without an address. The envelope arrived at 11:17 on a Tuesday morning, which was inconvenient for several reasons, the least important being that I was trying to persuade Nero Wolfe to eat an egg. Wolfe had been refusing the egg for 4 minutes. Fritz Brenner had been defending it for 3. I had been caught in the middle because, although Wolfe was the employer and Fritz was the cook, I was the only one present who could be blamed for both of them. "The egg is perfect," Fritz said. "I have not disputed its quality," Wolfe replied. "You have refused it." "I have refused the egg. That is the same thing." "It is not." Fritz looked at me. I shrugged. In our household, philosophical arguments occasionally arose from breakfast. The office door stood open to the dining room, and the warm scent of coffee, toast, and butter drifted through the brownstone. Beyond the tall windows, New York was already making its usual racket. Trucks complained in the street. A taxi horn sounded twice. Somewhere farther west, a delivery man was arguing with somebody who had probably earned it. Wolfe sat behind his desk in a dark green dressing gown, enormous and immovable, with the morning newspaper folded beside his plate. He had spent the previous hour in the plant rooms, inspecting orchids, and had come downstairs in a mood that suggested the orchids had behaved better than human beings. Then the doorbell rang. I rose. Wolfe looked at the clock. "Who is it?" "How should I know? You are the one going." "That is true." I crossed the hall and opened the door. A young messenger stood on the stoop. He wore a grey uniform, carried no parcel, and held a cream-colored envelope between 2 fingers as if it contained something fragile. "For Mr. Nero Wolfe." "That's me." He looked at me. "You don't look like him." "I've heard that before." He handed me the envelope. "Special delivery." "Who sent it?" He shook his head. "Didn't say." "Return address?" "No." "Did you see where it came from?" "No." "Did anybody give it to you?" He glanced down at the street. "Office pickup." "Which office?" "Private collection." "Whose?" He shrugged. "Sorry." He left. I shut the door and examined the envelope. It was thick cream paper of excellent quality. No postage stamp, no return address, no name, no address. Only one thing appeared on the front, a small black symbol resembling a closed eye. I carried it into the office. Wolfe had not touched his egg. He looked at the envelope. "Open it. Don't you want to speculate first?" "No, that's disappointing." I slit the envelope with a paper knife. Inside was a single card. The card was heavy, ivory-colored and embossed around the edges. No letterhead, no signature, no salutation, only 6 lines of type. "A fortune of $1 million awaits the person who possesses the right to claim it. The proof will be presented when the proper claimant appears. No name has been written because the rightful recipient already knows why the invitation was sent. Bring nothing. Ask no questions. Wait for the invitation to be recognized." At the bottom appeared a final line. "The bearer will understand." I read it twice. Wolfe held out his hand. I passed him the card. He studied it. "The bearer? That's what it says." "Beer of what?" "The invitation. Then it is addressed to the person holding it, which is me." "No, you're saying it's addressed to you." "I am saying it is. Addressed to whoever recognizes it." "What?" He turned the card over. Blank. He examined the edges. Blank. He held it toward the window. Nothing. Then he lowered it. "Where is the address?" "There isn't one." "Exactly." I sat down. "Could be a joke." "No." "A publicity stunt." "No." "A confidence trick." "Possibly." "An inheritance." "Possibly." "A trap." "You're possible." "You've..." Stopped looking bored. He ignored me. "Who delivered it?" "A messenger." "Professional, apparently. Paid by whom?" "Didn't know." "Find out." I picked up the telephone. "Before I do, there's something else." "What?" "The $1 million. Yes, you don't seem impressed. Money is rarely impressive. $1 million is. To you, perhaps. To most people. Then most people lack imagination." He placed the card on the desk. "What interests me is not the fortune, the invitation. Yes, because it has no recipient. More precisely, because it claims that the recipient will recognize it." which means whoever sent it believes the intended person possesses some prior knowledge. Correct. So why send it? That is the question. The telephone rang. I answered. The voice on the other end was female. Is this Nero Wolfe's office? Yes. To speak to Mr. Wolfe. About the invitation. I looked at Wolfe. He had heard. Name? Evelyn Marsh. One moment. I covered the mouthpiece. First claimant. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Put her through. I handed him the receiver. He listened. He said only 3 words. Come immediately. Then he hung up. I stared. You invited her? Yes. Why? Because she knows something. She hasn't told us anything. She called about the invitation. Lots of people might know. He picked up the card again. Not this invitation. 20 minutes later the bell rang. I opened the door to find Evelyn Marsh, standing alone. She was perhaps 50, carefully dressed with silver-grey hair arranged neatly, and the alert expression of a woman accustomed to noticing details before other people did. She entered the office. Her eyes went immediately to the cream envelope on Wolfe's desk. Then she stopped. I knew it. I closed the door. You knew what? That it had reached him. How? She looked at the invitation. Because I was supposed to receive it. Wolfe motioned toward the chair. Sit. She did. Mrs. Marsh? Yes. What is your connection with this invitation? I don't know who sent it. That is not what I asked. She swallowed. I received something like it 18 years ago. That got my attention. Something like it? Not the same invitation. What did you receive? A photograph. Of what? The Harcourt estate. I waited, she continued. It was a photograph of a house that no longer exists. Wolfe's expression remained unchanged. Why were you sent it? I don't know. You recognized the photograph immediately. Why? Because my father took it. Your father? Jonathan Marsh. Who was he? An accountant. Where? At a private investment firm. Which one? She hesitated. Marsh and Bell. I knew the name. It had been a respectable New York accounting partnership before disappearing nearly 20 years earlier. What happened to your father? He died. When? 16 years ago. Did he ever explain the photograph? No. Did he mention $1 million? She looked startled. Yes. Wolfe leaned forward slightly. How? My father once told me that there was money belonging to people who had never been paid. How much? $1 million. Exactly. Approximately. When did he say this? 3 days. Before he died. Did he tell you where it was? No. Did he tell you why? No. What else did he say? She hesitated. He said that if an invitation ever came without an address, I was to refuse it. I looked at Wolfe. He looked at her. Why, he never explained. And yet you came here. Because I didn't receive the invitation. Her eyes settled on the cream envelope. You did. That was interesting. Very interesting. How did you know it existed? I asked. I received a telephone call this morning. From whom? A man. He didn't give one. What did he say? Only this. She looked directly at Wolfe. He said, Mr. Wolfe has the invitation now. If you want the truth about your father, go there. The room went quiet. Wolfe reached for the bell. Fritz appeared almost immediately. Coffee. For Mrs. Marsh? Yes. Fritz nodded and vanished. Mrs. Marsh looked at the invitation. I thought it was meant for me. Why? Because of what my father said. Did he describe the invitation? No. Did he describe the paper? No. The symbol? No. The wording? No. Then why? Do you believe it concerns you? Because of the $1 million. That is insufficient. I know. She stood. I've told you everything I know. No. Her expression tightened. You have told me everything you wish to tell me. She looked at him for several seconds. Then she sat again. My father kept a box. What kind? Wood. Is it still in your possession? Yes. Locked? Yes. Key. I have it. Bring it. Why? Because if your father knew about this invitation 18 years ago, the box may explain why. She nodded. I'll return this afternoon. When she left, I closed the door. She knows more. Of course. How much? I do not know. Then why let her leave? Because she will return. You're certain? She wants the truth about her father. I sat down. 3 days before his death, he warned her about an invitation without an address. Wolfe nodded. And today she receives a call telling her the invitation is here. Yes. That's too neat. Correct. So someone knew exactly what her father told her. Yes. Which means the sender knows the Marsh family. Probably. And the sender knows about you. Certainly. And the sender knew the invitation would arrive here. Obviously. I leaned back. So who else knows? The bell rang. I looked at Wolfe. He looked at the clock. That was fast. It wasn't Mrs. Marsh. The bell rang again. I went downstairs. A man stood on the stoop. He was perhaps 60, tall, lean, and dressed in an expensive dark coat. His hair was white at the temples. He carried a leather briefcase. Archie Goodwin? Yes. I'm Daniel Rook. Come in. He stepped inside. I understand Mr. Wolfe has received an invitation. Apparently everybody understands that. He followed me into the office. Wolfe looked up. The man's eyes went directly to the card. Then he smiled. I knew it. You're the second person today, I said. Rook ignored me. Mr. Wolfe, I believe that invitation belongs to me. Wolfe gestured toward the chair. Explain, Rook said. 25 years ago I was employed by a man named Walter Vane. The financier? Yes. Vane died? 24 years ago. How did you know about this invitation? Rook reached into his coat. He withdrew a small metal token. It was round, silver-colored, with the same closed-eye symbol engraved on one side. He placed it on Wolfe's desk. This was given to me by Mr. Vane. When? 3 weeks before he died. What did he say? That if I ever saw that symbol again on cream paper, I was to claim the invitation. Why? He said it would lead to $1 million. Where? He never said. What did he mean by claim? I don't know. Did he mention anyone else? One name. Whose? Jonathan Marsh. I glanced toward Wolfe. The connection was immediate. Mrs. Marsh's father. Rook continued. Vane said Marsh had stolen something from him. What? I don't know. Money? No. Documents? I don't know. What happened to the documents? Vane said they were worth more than money. Wolfe examined the silver token. Where did you obtain this? From Vane's desk. After his death, yes. You stole it? I inherited it. From whom Vane left instructions? To you? Yes. What instructions, Rooks? Expression hardened. He said I would understand when the invitation came. Why did you wait 24 years? I didn't know what he meant. Until today. Until today. I looked at the token. Why come here? Because I received a telephone call. From the same man, I assume so. What did he say? That Mr. Wolfe had the invitation. Anything else? Rook hesitated. He said there would be 3 claimants. That stopped me. 3, yes. Did he name them? No. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Thank you, Mr. Rook. Will you investigate, perhaps? I have a right to the fortune. So you believe? I do. You have no proof. Rook stood. I have the token. That proves nothing. He looked at the invitation. It proves more than you think. Then he left. I waited until the door closed. Third claimant? Not yet. I stared at him. What, to Mrs. Marsh and Rook? Yes. Who's the third? The answer arrived before lunch. His name was Peter Vale. He was 42, broad-shouldered, restless, and wore a suit that had been expensive enough to be irritating. He entered without waiting for me to finish the introduction. I was told you have the invitation. Who told you? A woman. No, then you don't know much. He ignored me. Mr. Wolfe, the invitation is mine. Wolfe did not invite him to sit. Why? Because I know what it refers to. What? The account. What account? The Harcourt account. I felt a small internal click. The name had not appeared in either of the previous conversations. Wolfe's face became very still. Continue. 32 years ago, a trust was established. By whom? I don't know. What was its purpose? To hold money until certain property claims were settled. How much? Money, $1 million. Where is it now? That is the problem. Explain. Was transferred. To whom? I don't know. Then how do you know about it? Vale hesitated. My grandfather worked for the law firm handling the trust. What was his name? Edwin Vale. Did he leave records? Some. What did he tell you? That the account had never been closed. Is impossible. That's what he said. Why? Because the money was never released. To whom? To the rightful owner. Who was the rightful owner? I don't know. Then why are you claiming the invitation? Vale looked directly at Wolfe. Because my grandfather told me something else. What? If an invitation ever appeared without an address, I was to follow it. Why? He said the invitation would identify the person who had lied. That sentence changed the temperature of the room. Wolfe finally motioned toward a chair. Sit. Vale sat. I took notes. Wolfe asked, what else did your grandfather say? That 3 people would eventually come forward. The same 3 assume. Did he know Marsh? Yes. Vane? Yes. How? My grandfather handled legal papers for both. Wolfe leaned back. And the Harcourt account, Vale swallowed, was connected to both men. How? I don't know. You do. Vale stared at him. Then he said quietly, my grandfather believed the $1 million was never meant to belong to either of them. To whom? That was the mystery. After Vale left, I closed my notebook. 3 claimants, yes. 3 families, yes. 3 separate pieces of information, yes. Marsh knew about the invitation. Warning. Correct. Rook knew the symbol. Correct. The Harcourt account. Correct. And each knows something the others could not possibly know. That is the interesting part. Why? Wolfe reached for the invitation. Because whoever sent it expected each claimant to reveal his own knowledge. You think they were summoned deliberately, obviously. But why send the invitation here? Because the brownstone is neutral ground. And why us? Because the sender requires an observer. Why? Because the real contest is not over the $1 million. I looked at him. Then what is it? He turned the invitation over once more. The invitation itself. The paper? The absence of an address. The wording? The claim that the proper recipient will recognize it. The 3 claimants, their knowledge. He placed the card flat on the desk. Mr. Goodwin, a genuine inheritance seeks a person. Yes. A legal notice seeks an address. Yes. A demand seeks compliance. Yes. What does this seek? I looked at the card. Recognition. Exactly. And whoever recognizes it exposes himself. Wolfe nodded. The telephone rang, I answered. Yes. I hope, Mr. said. Wolfe has not asked you to leave. Why? Because the invitation was never intended for one person. Who are you? That is irrelevant. Try me. A pause. Tell Mr. Wolfe that the 4th claimant will arrive tonight. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver. Wolfe watched me. Who? I told him. He remained silent. Then he reached for the invitation. For the first time he turned it sideways and examined the embossed border rather than the printed words. Interesting. What? The border. I moved closer. The raised design looked ornamental. Wolfe traced one section with a fingertip. It isn't decoration. What is it? A map. I laughed. Of what? He looked at me. That, Archie, is what we are going to discover. Outside, a taxi screamed around the corner. A newsboy shouted an afternoon edition, and the city continued its business, as though $1 million had not just become the smallest part of a much larger problem. Wolfe reached for the bell. Fritz. The cook appeared. Yes, sir, dinner. What would you like? Wolfe glanced at the cream-colored invitation. Something substantial. Fritz nodded. Beef? Yes. Potatoes? Naturally. Vegetables? Minimal. Fritz disappeared. I smiled. You've accepted the case. Wolfe looked at me. No, you haven't. I have accepted the invitation. What's the difference? He folded the card and placed it beside the silver token. $1 million is an inducement. The invitation, evidence. He leaned back. And evidence, Mr. Goodwin, is something I never refuse. Chapter 2. 3 claimants and 1 fortune. The 4th claimant did not arrive that evening. This was not surprising. People who possess important information generally prefer to arrive after everyone else has made themselves ridiculous. I knew this because I had spent years watching them do it. The 3 claimants, already in the house, were sufficiently troublesome. Arthur Bell had returned at 4 in the afternoon with a leather portfolio and the solemn manner of a retired accountant who had spent 40 years discovering that figures lied less often than people. Helen Carter arrived at 5, carrying no portfolio, no handbag large enough to conceal a weapon, and no visible anxiety except the sort produced by being required to wait for Nero Wolfe. Thomas Reed arrived at 6:15. He had the weathered face of a man who had spent much of his life outdoors, though his suit was expensive, and his shoes had been polished recently. None of them knew the others were present. That was Wolfe's arrangement. He interviewed them separately. I was in the office for all 3 examinations. It was an excellent evening for detective work. Rain had begun against the windows, soft at first, and then harder, washing the lights of the street into blurred yellow streaks. In the dining room, Fritz had prepared roast beef, potatoes, asparagus, and a sauce that I considered evidence that civilization still had a future. Wolfe considered the asparagus acceptable. That was praise. Arthur Bell came first. He was 68, thin, bald on top, and wore gold-rimmed spectacles. His hands were the hands of a man who had spent decades turning pages rather than digging holes. Wolfe indicated the chair. Mr. Bell, yes. You believe the invitation belongs to you. I know it does. Why? Bell opened his portfolio. I was employed by Walter Grant for 11 years. The financier. Yes. In what capacity? Chief accountant. His death. When did he die? 24 years ago. His estate was settled officially. Bell's mouth tightened slightly. Officially? The estate records say so. And you disagree. I know what I saw. What did you see? Bell removed a sheet of paper. This. I took it. It was a photocopy of an old accounting ledger. A single line had been circled. Special reserve. $1,000,000 below it appeared a handwritten notation. Hold until claimant is identified. I looked at Wolfe. He did not react. Who wrote this? He asked. Mr. Grant. You are certain? I recognize his handwriting. Why was the money not distributed? I was never told. Did you? What happened? Bell smiled without amusement. Mr. Grant told me that if I asked again, I would no longer be his accountant. Did you ask again? No. Good judgment. Bell nodded. After his death, I examined the records. Carefully. Very. And the reserve account had disappeared. Transferred. Yes. To whom? That is what I could never establish. Wolfe folded his hands. Then why do you believe the invitation belongs to you? Bell looked toward the cream-colored envelope. Because Mr. Grant gave me a key. What key? A small brass key. Where is it? At home. What does it open? I don't know. You kept it for 24 years without discovering that. Mr. Grant told me not to use it unless I received an invitation without an address. I looked up. There it was again. The same instruction. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Did Mr. Grant tell you that phrase? Yes. Exactly those words? Exactly. When? 2 weeks before his death. Did he mention anyone else? Bell hesitated. Yes. Who? Walter Grant said there were 3 people who might eventually receive the invitation. Did he name them? No. Did he tell you why there would be 3? No. What else did he say? Bell's fingers tightened around the portfolio. He said the money was never his. That was the first important statement. Wolfe noticed it. So whose was it? I don't know. Then why did he possess it? I don't know. Yet you believe it is connected to the invitation. How? Bell looked at the card. Because the wording is identical. I leaned forward. Identical to what? An instruction in Grant's private ledger. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. What instruction? Bell recited it from memory. The rightful claimant will recognize the invitation. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Wolfe said, Thank you, Mr. Bell. Bell rose. You don't believe me. I believe you. All of it? No. Bell's face tightened. Which part? I shall tell you when I know. Bell gave him a long look. Then he left. I waited until the front door closed. He's telling the truth. Some of it, the key, probably exists. The ledger, certainly. The $1 million, also probable. Then what is false? Wolfe looked at the notes I had taken. He says he does not know why the money was held. You think he does? I think a chief accountant who finds a $1 million reserve account with an instruction to identify a claimant does spend 24 years without wondering what it means. Maybe he was afraid. Fear and ignorance are not synonyms. Helen Carter arrived at 5. She was 39, composed, intelligent, and possessed of the peculiar ability to make silence seem like a weapon. She worked for a publishing house in Midtown. Wolfe knew this because he had already asked me to check. She sat. I assume you know why I am here. Yes, the invitation belongs to me. Because Walter Grant promised it. Wolfe did not blink. When? 3 months before his death. You knew him personally? No, then how could he promise you anything? My employer represented him. Your employer? Mr. Bellamy's publishing firm. Grant had a publishing interest, not officially, unofficially. He financed several books. Using the $1 million? She hesitated. I don't know. Then what did he promise you? Helen opened her handbag. She removed a small envelope. It was old, not cream, grey. She placed it on the desk. Mr. Grant gave this to my employer. Why? He said it should be delivered to me if certain conditions were met. What conditions? His death. That is one. The publication of a particular manuscript. What manuscript? The House of Ashes. I recognized the title. It had never been published. Who wrote it? Edwin Carter. I looked at her. Your father? Yes. Why was it never published? Because Walter Grant bought the rights. Why? He said the book contained information that could ruin several people. Did it concern the $1 million? Partly. Helen opened the envelope. Inside was a single typed paragraph. She handed it to Wolfe. He read it. His expression remained neutral. He passed it to me. The note was brief. Helen, if Grant is dead and the book remains unpublished, the account exists. Do not trust anyone who claims to know the whole story. The invitation will identify the missing witness. I looked up. Your father wrote this? Yes. When? 26 years ago, 2 years before Grant died. Yes. Why didn't you publish the book? Because I never had it. Where is it? I don't know. Then, how did you get this? My father mailed it to me. When? The day before he disappeared. I stared at her. Disappeared? My father was never found. That changed the atmosphere. Why didn't you report it? I was 12. She folded her hands. My mother told me he had abandoned us. And you believed her for many years. When did you stop? When Walter Grant died. Why? Because the day after his death, a man came to my office and asked whether I still had my father's note. Who? I never saw him before. Did he identify himself? No. What did he say? Only that I received invitation without an address. I should come to Mr. Wolfe at her. You received no invitation? No, only the message. Yes. So why claim this invitation? Because I know what Grant was protecting. What? Helen looked directly at Wolfe. My father's missing manuscript. Wolfe's fingers rested on the desk. Where is it? I believe Mr. Grant hid it. Where? I don't know. Then why believe the invitation concerns it? Because my father's final note says it will. Wolfe nodded. Thank you. Helen stood. Before leaving, she said, Mr. Wolfe. Yes? If you find my father's manuscript, I want it. Why? Because he spent his life trying to tell the truth. She left. I waited. Now we have a missing manuscript. A missing father. And Walter Grant. Yes. I looked at Wolfe. You're enjoying this. No, you've got that look. The look you get when a case stops being simple. Wolfe rang the bell. Beer. You're celebrating. No. Then why beer? I am thirsty. Fritz brought it. Wolfe drank half the glass. Then he said, Mr. Goodwin. Yes, find everything you can about Edwin Carter. Already doing it. And Walter Grant. Already done. And Arthur Bell. Naturally. Do not neglect Helen Carter. I won't. And find the connection between all three. I smiled. That should be easy. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. It should. All roads seem to lead to Grant. Then the roads are not the mystery. What is? Why they were built. Thomas Reed arrived at 6:15. He did not carry papers. He carried a walking stick. He placed it beside the chair and sat heavily. You know why I'm here? Yes. The invitation belongs to why? I was estate manager for Walter Grant. How long? 16 years. Until his death, yes. Did you manage his personal? Partly. What else? His country property. Where? Westchester. Did Grant keep records there? Yes. What sort? Property deeds? Financial records? Some. Private. Correspondence. Plenty. Did you ever see anything concerning $1 million? Reed looked at Wolfe. Yes. Explain. Grant had a locked room. Where in his country house? What was inside? Boxes. How many dozens? Labels. Nah. Did you open them? No. Why not? Grant forbade it. Did you have a key? No. Who did? Arthur Bell. That was the third connection. I wrote it down. Wolfe asked. Did you know Bell? Yes. Did you know Helen Carter? Reed frowned. No. Did you know Edwin Carter? Yes. How? He visited the estate. When? Shortly before he disappeared. Why? He was looking for a document. What document? Something Grant had taken. From his father. His father? Edwin Carter's father. Who was he? Lawyer. Name? Charles Carter. Helen's father was Edwin Carter. The chain tightened. Wolfe asked, "What did Edwin Carter want?" "I don't know. Did he find it?" "I don't know." "Did he meet Grant?" "Yes." "Alone?" "No." "Who was present?" Reed hesitated. "Arthur Bell." I looked at Wolfe. Reed continued. "They argued." "About?" "The account." "The $1 million?" "Yes." "What did Grant say?" "He said the money was not to be released." "To whom?" "To the claimant." "Which claimant?" Reed shook his head. "He didn't say." "What happened afterward?" "Was Wolfe alive?" "Yes." "And Leia disappeared?" "Yes." "When?" "Did he days anything?" "His briefcase." "Did anyone else disappear?" Reed looked down. "One of Grant's clerks." "Name?" "Samuel Pike." "When?" "The same week." "Was Pike involved?" "I don't know." Wolfe leaned back. "Why do you believe the invitation belongs to you?" Reed reached inside his coat. He removed a photograph. It showed Walter Grant standing beside a stone building. The picture was old. Grant was younger. Beside him stood another man. I recognized him from a newspaper photograph. Charles Carter, Helen's grandfather. On the back of the photograph, written in Grant's hand, were 5 words. "The manager knows where." Reed looked at Wolfe. "That was given to me on the last day I saw Grant." "Where?" "His office." "What did he say?" "That if an invitation ever came without an address, I would know where to look." "Where?" Reed tapped the photograph. "At the house." "What house?" "The Harcourt House." The name again. The same name that had appeared in the telephone warning from the previous evening. I felt the pieces shifting. Not fitting. Shifting. Wolfe saw it too. "Is the house still standing?" "No." "When was it demolished?" 27 years ago. "What stood there afterward?" "Nothing." "Who owns the land?" "I don't know." "Who bought it?" "I don't know." "Did Grant own it?" "Yes." "Did he sell it?" "Yes." "To whom's what I never understood." "Why?" "Because the sale occurred after his death." Silence. I looked at Wolfe. Reed sat very still. "The documents were signed after Grant died," he said. "Impossible," I said. "Exactly." Wolfe's eyes had become very bright. "Who signed them?" 3 trustees' names. Reed gave them. Arthur Bell. Interest. Charles Carter. Helen Carter's grandfather, Samuel Pike, the missing clerk. Wolfe said nothing. Reed looked toward the door. "I think someone is watching this house." "Why?" "Because I received a message this morning." "From whom?" "I don't know." "What did it say?" Reed's face hardened. "Do not tell Wolfe about the Harcourt House." I smiled. "You've just done exactly that." I decided I had nothing left to lose. Wolfe looked at the photograph. "The Harcourt House." He said the words almost to himself. Then he turned to Goodwin. "Yes? Tomorrow you will visit the county records office. What am I looking for?" "The Harcourt property." "Deeds?" "Everything?" "Transfers?" "Everything. Trust documents?" "Everything." I nodded. Wolfe's gaze moved to the cream-colored invitation. The 3 claimants have each supplied a different piece. Arthur Bell knows about the reserve account. Helen Carter knows about the missing manuscript. Thomas Reed knows about the Harcourt property. Yet all 3 connect to Walter Grant. Yes. And all 3 were given instructions by different people. Which means... I waited. Wolfe touched the invitation with one finger. "The fortune is not the secret." "What is?" "Why 3 unrelated people were taught to recognize the same invitation." He paused. "And why Walter Grant spent the last years of his life ensuring that none of them knew the whole truth." That night Wolfe ate roast beef with horseradish and potatoes, while I read him the first. Reports on Walter Grant. Grant had been a financier. He had founded a private investment company. He had acquired property. He had funded publishing ventures. He had maintained a country estate. He had been associated with several lawyers and accountants. His estate had been settled within 14 months of his death. No major disputes, no missing assets, no unexplained debts. On paper, Walter Grant had died a wealthy but orderly man, the kind of man who leaves behind numbers that add up. That was the problem. His numbers did not add up. Arthur Bell's reserve account had disappeared. Helen Carter's father's manuscript had vanished. Thomas Reed had described property transferred after Grant's death. 3 apparently unrelated irregularities, all touching the same man, all involving documents, and all somehow connected with the Harcourt House. I put down the papers. "There's something else." Wolfe continued eating. "The 3 claimants don't just know different things." "Go on." "They believe different things." "Yes. Bell believes the money is being held for a claimant." "Correct." "Helen believes..." Invitation leads to her father's manuscript. Correct. Reed believes it leads to the Harcourt property. Correct. 3 theories. Yes, but only one invitation. Wolfe nodded. Therefore, someone wants them to come together. Yes. Why? He placed his fork down. That is the first sensible question you have asked tonight. I smiled. Thank you. It was not praise. Of course. Wolfe rose slowly and moved toward the office. I followed. He stopped before the desk and looked at the cream-colored envelope. The sender made one mistake. They assumed the invitation would lead us toward the fortune. It hasn't. No, where has it led? Wolfe's gaze settled on the black symbol resembling a closed eye toward Walter Grant. He turned off the desk lamp, which means Walter Grant is not the dead man at the end of this mystery. I waited. He is the beginning. Outside, the rain had stopped. New York glittered under the streetlights, wet and restless, while the brownstone settled into its familiar nighttime quiet. Above us, in the orchid rooms, Wolfe's plants waited beneath their lamps. On his desk lay 3 contradictory stories: a vanished manuscript, a missing $1 million, a dead financier, a demolished house, and an invitation that had never needed an address because, apparently, the person who sent it already knew exactly where everyone would go. Tomorrow we would find out what had stood at the Harcourt house, and I had the unpleasant feeling that whatever we found there had been waiting for us for 24 years. Chapter 3. The name that was never written. There are 2 kinds of handwriting. The first is intended to communicate. The second is intended to leave evidence. Nero Wolfe was interested in the second. He had been examining the cream-colored invitation for 23 minutes when I entered the office with breakfast. I say examining because staring would be unfair. Wolfe had turned the card over, under, beside, and against the light. He had measured the margins with a ruler. He had inspected the envelope beneath a magnifying glass. He had even placed the paper beneath a sheet of clear glass and illuminated it from below. The $1 million had not interested him for several hours. The invitation did. That meant the $1 million was probably in trouble. I put his breakfast beside him. Eggs. He did not answer. Coffee. Nothing. Toast. He raised one finger. I waited. Close the door. I closed it. The paper was manufactured specially. I looked at the invitation. It looks like paper. An excellent observation. Thank you. The rag content is unusually high, meaning expensive. People don't spend money on invitations unless they expect something. Correct. Like $1 million. No, like someone recognizing it. Precisely. He lifted the envelope. Look at the flap. I bent over it. What am I seeing? The glue, not glue. Gum. Fine. The flap was sealed by hand. That's unusual. Not especially. He handed me the magnifying glass. Observe the lower edge. I looked. Tiny irregularities appeared along the paper. What are those? Pressure distortions. From the ceiling? No, then what? From something underneath. He placed a second sheet of paper beneath the invitation. The pressure marks became more obvious. A faint line, then another, then a series of shallow indentations. It looked almost like handwriting that had been erased before the ink was ever applied. I stared. Someone wrote on another sheet while this was underneath. Yes, with enough pressure to mark this one. Yes. Can we read it? Not yet. He moved the desk lamp. The angle changed. A few letters emerged. I could make out only fragments. R, E, and that could be anything. Naturally, maybe a name. It is a name. I looked at him. Whose? That is the question. He placed the invitation under the lamp again. The writer prepared a document. What document? Likely a letter or a list. They wrote a name, placed the invitation beneath it. Yes. Why? To conceal the name from anyone. Reading the invitation. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense. I frowned. If you want to conceal a name, don't write it. Unless you need the name while preparing the invitation. I thought about it. The writer needed to know the recipient. Yes, but didn't want the recipient's name on the finished invitation. Exactly. So the omission was deliberate. Entirely. At 9:30 Archie Goodwin had the unenviable pleasure of visiting the United States Post Office archives. This is not a place designed for human happiness. I spent 40 minutes examining postage records, mailing practices, and paper processing information while a clerk named Mr. Peters explained things in the tone of a man who had been waiting 20 years for somebody to ask. The envelope wasn't mailed through ordinary channels, he said. I gathered that. No stamp. Correct. No cancellation. Correct. Couriers. That's what I thought. Private delivery. Any records? No. Then how do you know? He pointed to the envelope. The paper. I looked. What about it? Postal stock. Meaning, envelopes this size were once used by private banking houses. When? 30 years ago. I straightened. Which banks? Several. Can you identify this one? He examined it. Not precisely. Why? The watermark. He held it toward the light. There, almost invisible, appeared a small pattern. A set of initials, WG. I felt a jolt. Grant? Mr. Peters shrugged. Could stand for anything. I thanked him. Outside, the cold air felt better. I telephoned Wolfe from a payphone. Grant's initials are in the paper. Good. Not proof. I did not ask for proof. The envelope stock came from private banking houses. Which? Can't identify. Can you identify the watermark? Initials WG. Silence. Then, return. I did. Wolfe had moved the invitation to the library table. Beside it were 3 magnifying glasses, a ruler, a sheet of tracing paper, and the silver token Arthur Bell had provided. Put the envelope there. I did. He compared the watermark. The same. You knew. I suspected. How? The paper. I gave him a look. He ignored it. Walter Grant used stationery bearing his initials. Why would this invitation be made from his paper? Because the sender wants the past to authenticate the present. Meaning, anyone who recognizes Grant's stationery will believe the invitation concerns Grant. That seems obvious. Obvious things are often the most effective. He placed the silver token beside the invitation. The closed eye symbol faced upward. Notice this. What? The symbol. It matches the invitation. Vane's token, yes. And Grant's paper, yes. So Grant made it. Not necessarily. Someone had access to his stationery. Exactly. His office? His estate? Possibly. His accountant? Possibly. Arthurly. One possibility. The estate manager, another. Helen Carter? Less likely. Then why use Grant's paper? To establish authority. For what? To make 3 people believe the invitation concerns them. I looked at the card. 3 people, at least. Bell, yes. Reeds, and the 4th claimant, eventually. I remembered the anonymous caller, the 4th. Wolfe nodded. Whoever he is. At 11, I returned to the county records office. The Harcourt property files occupied 3 drawers. The first concerned ownership. The second concerned demolition. The third contained legal correspondence. I began with the oldest. Harcourt House had belonged to a family named Harcourt for generations. Walter Grant acquired the property in a complicated transaction. The sale was challenged. The challenge was withdrawn. Then came a trust. Then a transfer. Then another. The paperwork was perfectly respectable. Too respectable. The signatures were clean. The dates were orderly. The amounts were precise. Yet one thing bothered me. Every major document referred to an appendix, and every appendix was missing. I copied the references. Then I found something else. A letter from Walter Grant's attorney. It contained one sentence that mattered. The recipient must not be identified in the correspondence. I stared at it. There it was again. No name, no recipient. The same deliberate omission. I called Wolfe. This isn't an isolated trick. What have you found? Grant's legal papers also avoid naming someone. Where? Harcourt property records. Read the sentence. I did. He was silent. Anything else? Appendices missing. How many? All of them. Excellent. You keep saying that. Because it is. How is missing information excellent? Because someone removed it. And? Someone who removes a document usually leaves the document's shadow. I looked at the files. References. Exactly. Which means the missing material was important. To whom? That is what we shall determine. When I returned to the brownstone, Wolfe had arranged the 3 claimant files across the desk. Arthur Bell. Helen Carter. Thomas. Beneath them lay a 4th blank folder. I raised an eyebrow. Planning ahead? Yes. For the 4th claimant? Yes. You still don't know who he is? No. Then why a folder? Because I dislike disorder. I sat. The invitation was written without a recipient. Correct. The writer knew the recipient. Correct. The writer deliberately avoided naming the recipient. Correct. Why? Wolfe leaned back. Because naming the recipient would reveal the writer's knowledge. I considered that. Explain. Suppose the intended person is Arthur Bell. Yes. If the invitation says Arthur Bell, Bell knows the sender knows him, obviously. But if the invitation says nothing, Bell must decide for himself whether it is intended for him, which means he reveals that he knows something. Exactly. So the invitation is a test. Yes. The claimant identifies himself. Correct. By recognizing something only he could recognize. Precisely. I looked toward the card. Then the invitation isn't calling the recipient. No. It is making the recipient call himself. Wolfe smiled faintly. Now you understand. That afternoon, Arthur Bell returned. He carried the brass key. I believe you have found something. We have. He placed the key on Wolfe's desk. Then you know what it opens? Not yet, Mr. Grant told me it would be connected to the invitation. Did he tell you how? No. Did he tell you where to use it? Only that I would know. Why? Because of the name. What name? Bell stared at the name that was never written. I looked at him. I don't know. Then why mention it? Because Grant said the name would never appear on the invitation. Wolfe's face remained calm. Continue. He said that was the point. What point? That the right person would know. Wolfe nodded. Did Grant ever write the name? Bell hesitated. Once. Where? In his ledger. Which ledger? The private one. The one containing the $1 million reserve. Yes. Do you have it? No. Who does? Bell looked away. I thought Mr. Reed had it. I wrote that down. Why? Because Reed managed the estate. And you? I managed the money. Helen Carter? She had access to Grant's correspondence through her employer. 3 people. 3 channels. 3 kinds of access. Money. Correspondence. Property. And somewhere between them, a missing name. That evening I visited Helen Carter at her apartment. She let me in after a long pause. You found something. Maybe. She looked at the invitation. Did you discover the name? What name? The one my father was looking for. What did your father call it? The claimant. Did he know who it was? I believe so. Why? He wrote a letter. Where? I know who does. She looked toward the window. I think Walter Grant did. Then the name could be in Grant's papers. Yes. Why was it never written on the invitation? Helen gave me a strange smile. Because my father said the invitation was never meant to be delivered. That stopped me. What? He told me that. When? Before he disappeared. Why would someone create an invitation they never intended to deliver, to identify the person who came looking for it? I felt a chill. That's what Wolfe thinks. She looked at me. Then Mr. Wolfe is close. Close to what? The truth my father died trying to protect. At 9 that night the 4th claimant finally appeared. He didn't ring the bell. He walked through the open front gate and waited beneath the street lamp. I saw him from the office window. He was perhaps 55, wearing a dark overcoat and carrying nothing. He looked up at the brownstone, then at the window, then at the invitation. I opened the door. Mr. Wolfe is expecting you, he smiled. No. Then why are you here? Because I am the person who was not named. I stared. Your name, George Hale. Occupation? Former solicitor? Connection to Walter Grant? He looked toward the office. Ask Mr. Wolfe. I brought him inside. Wolfe studied him. You know why you're here? Yes. You know the invitation? Yes. You believe it belongs to you? No. That was unexpected. Then why come? Hale looked at the cream-colored card. Because the person it belongs to is dead. Wolfe's expression did not change. Who? Hale smiled without humor. That is why the name was never written. He sat. The invitation was not created for the living claimant. He paused. It was created to find the people who destroyed him. The room became silent. I looked at Wolfe. He was staring at the pressure marks beneath the paper, the faint impressions, the half-visible letters. Suddenly I understood why he had been so interested. The name beneath the invitation was not merely missing. It had been concealed, and whoever wrote it had expected someone else to discover it. Wolfe touched the card. The name was written elsewhere. Hale nodded. Yes. Then why place the invitation over it? Because the writer wanted the name transferred without being seen. I stared. Transferred? Hale looked at me. The pressure. Wolfe smiled. Now the pieces were moving again. The name had never been printed. It had never been erased. It had been deliberately impressed into the invitation. A name hidden in plain sight. Wolfe rose. Mr. Goodwin. Yes? Tomorrow we find out whose name was written. And then? He looked at the invitation. Then we find out why the dead man needed 3 strangers to recognize it. Outside, the rain began again. The brownstones settled into silence. On the desk, beneath the lamp, the cream-colored card showed nothing to an ordinary eye. But under the right angle of light, faint letters waited. A name that had never been written on the invitation. A name someone had nevertheless made certain the paper remembered. Chapter 4. The man who knew the wrong secret. Thomas Reed disappeared at 10:26 on a Thursday morning. At 10:27 I discovered that the invitation had disappeared too. Those two facts were not necessarily connected. With Nero Wolfe, however, not necessarily was usually the first warning that something was connected with everything else. The morning had begun quietly. That was the first mistake. Quiet mornings at Wolfe's brownstone were dangerous because they encouraged optimism. Fritz had served breakfast at 8. Wolfe had eaten 3 slices of bacon, half a grapefruit, 2 eggs, and enough toast to establish diplomatic relations with the kitchen. He had then retired to the plant rooms to inspect an orchid that, according to him, had developed an attitude. I had spent the first hour reading the newspapers and the second following 3 separate trails. Through the records concerning Walter Grant, Arthur Bell had been at the county courthouse the previous afternoon. Helen Carter had spent 2 hours in the basement archives of the publishing company where she worked. Thomas Reed had visited a bank. That was not suspicious. What was suspicious was that all 3 had asked about the same dead man's trust, and they had done so within 24 hours of one another. I had discovered this through a combination of telephone calls, professional courtesy, and the fact that people become remarkably cooperative when they believe a detective is already ahead of them. I was not. Wolfe was. I was merely trying to keep up. At 9:40 I entered the office carrying a folder. Wolfe was behind his desk. His morning newspaper lay untouched. That meant he was thinking. His orchids had survived inspection, apparently. 3 developments, I said. Give me the useful one first. Arthur Bell searched the county probate files for Walter Grant's private trust. Wolfe looked up. Yesterday, yes. How long? What did he seek? The original trust agreement. Did he find it? No. Good. How is that good? Because if he found it, he would have lied about it. I put the folder down. Helen Carter searched her employer's old correspondence. Grant? Mostly. Anything specific? Letters between Grant and her father. Edwin Carter? Yes. What was she looking for? What? Letter dated March 17th, 26 years ago. Did she find it? No. Another useful failure. You're in a cheerful mood. I am not. You sound cheerful. I sound correct. Thomas Reed? Wolfe looked at me. He visited First Metropolitan Bank. Why? He asked for records concerning an account established by Walter Grant. Which account? The Harcourt Trust. Wolfe's face changed. Only slightly. But I had been working for him too long not to notice. The Harcourt Trust, he said. Yes. How long did Reed remain? 40 minutes. Did he obtain anything? He left with an envelope. What was it? I don't know. You followed him? Of course. And he went to his hotel. Then he made a telephone call. To whom? I don't know. You did not hear? No. Why? Because unlike some people, I have not yet developed the ability to listen through walls. Wolfe ignored that. What happened after the call? Reed left the hotel. Where did he go? To the public library. What did he look for? Old newspapers. Which dates? 3 dates connected with Grant's death. Interesting. Yes. What did he find? Wolfe leaned back. That is the first genuinely interesting development. I sat down. All 3 are searching independently. No. You think they're working together? No. Then what? They are searching because each believes the invitation will reward whoever understands the secret first. 3 competitors. 3 people who have been given 3 pieces of the same lie. And Reed? He may have 4. I thought about that. Why would he? Because he managed Grant's property. Bell had the money. Carter had the correspondence. Reed had the property. Yes. Which makes him the most dangerous. Not necessarily. Why? Because property records are harder to destroy than money. I smiled. Unless the property is demolished. Wolfe's eyes settled on me. The Harcourt House. Exactly. He reached for the bell. Miss Goodwin. Yes? Go to Reed's hotel. I've already been there. Go again. Why? Because you were looking for him. And now? Look for what he left. The hotel was a narrow brick side street where the carpets had once been expensive and had since surrendered. Thomas Reed had occupied room 417. The clerk told me he had checked out. When? 20 minutes ago. Did he leave luggage? No. Any message? No. Did he say where he was going? The clerk shook his head. Was anyone with him? No. I gave him my card. Reed calls. Tell him Mr. Wolfe needs to speak with him. The clerk looked at the card. Is he in trouble? Not yet. That answer seemed to satisfy him. I returned to the brownstone. Reed was already there. He stood in the office when I entered. His face was pale. Wolfe was staring at him. I stopped. You got here before me. I took a taxi. Then you chose the wrong taxi. Reed ignored me. Mr. Wolfe, I need your help. Wolfe gestured toward the chair. Sit. Reed sat. Someone is following me. Who? I don't know. How long? Since last night. Why? I found something. What? Reed looked at me, then at Wolfe. The Harcourt Trust was never a trust. I waited. Wolfe did not move. Explain. It was a holding arrangement. For whom? Not Walter Grant. Who? Reed swallowed. I don't know. Then how do you know it was not Grant's? Because I found the original transfer. Where? At the bank. The envelope you carried? Yes. What did it contain? An account. Number. Only that? And a signature. Whose? Reed hesitated. Walter Grant's. Then why does that prove the money was not his? Because the signature was witnessed by a man who died 3 years before the document was supposedly signed. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Yes. Who benefited? I don't know. Who received the money? I don't know. What did you discover at the library? Reed's hands tightened. A newspaper report. About? The night Grant died. That is already known. Not this part. What part? Grant wasn't alone. Wolfe leaned forward. Who was with him? Reed looked at the door. Edwin Carter. That was Helen Carter's missing father. Alive? I asked. At 11:40 that night. And Grant died when? After midnight. Who reported the body? The housekeeper. Then why wasn't Carter mentioned? Because the police report was altered. Wolfe's voice became quiet. By whom? I don't know. What else? There was another man. Who? I don't know. You saw his name? No. Then how do you know? Because the newspaper described him under what? Description? Reed looked at me. A witness, I frowned. What witness? That's the problem. He lowered his voice. There was no witness. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. The newspaper said a witness had seen a man leaving Grant's house at 12:15. Who was the witness? The witness was never named. And, 24 years later, the same sentence appears in 3 separate versions of the newspaper. Identical, word for word. Wolfe leaned back. Which means it wasn't a witness statement. It was planted. Yes. And why was it planted? Reed looked at Wolfe. To establish that someone left the house who never existed. I felt a chill. Wolfe said nothing. Reed continued. That's why I disappeared. You have not disappeared. Not yet. Why were you frightened? Because I found the person who was supposed to be that witness. Who? Reed's face had gone grey. Me. There are moments when a detective's office becomes very quiet. Not because nobody has anything to say, because everybody has too much. I looked at Reed. You? I was there. When? The night Grant died. Why didn't you say so before? Because Grant ordered me never to. 24 years is a long time to obey an order. I was afraid of what he knew. Wolfe asked. What did you see? Reed closed his eyes. Grant was arguing with Edwin Carter. About the money. Again. Yes. Who else? A third man. Name. I didn't know him. What did he do? He placed a folder on Grant's desk. What was in it? I couldn't see. What happened? Grant opened it. Then he said, You promised me the name. I looked at Wolfe. And the third man? He said, You have it already. Then? Grant looked at Carter. Why? Because Carter knew what the name meant. Wolfe's voice was almost a whisper. What name? I never heard it. Why? Because the telephone rang. Reed stopped. Who answered? Grant. What did he say? Nothing. Then? He dropped the receiver. Why? He was dead. I stared at him. What? Poison. The word landed hard. Grant was poisoned, yes. How do you know? Because I saw the glass. What glass? His whiskey. Did you tell the police? No, why not? I was told to leave. By whom? The third man. Did you obey? Yes. And Carter? He stayed alive. Yes, then why did he disappear? Reed looked down. I don't know. Wolfe studied him. You have omitted something. Reed's jaw tightened. Yes. What? The third man had the invitation. I felt my pulse quicken. What invitation? The one you have. Wolfe did not move. You saw it? Not this one? The same design? Yes. The cream paper? Yes. Where was it? In the folder. Then what would it? With the trust. A list. What? List names. Whose? People connected to the money. How many? 7. Do you remember them? 4. Who? Reed began to speak, then stopped. He looked at the desk. His eyes widened. Where is it? I knew immediately what he meant. The invitation. I turned toward Wolfe's desk. The cream envelope was gone. I had seen it there when I left that morning. Now there was only the silver token. I searched the desk. Nothing. I checked the drawer. Nothing. The folder. Nothing. Wolfe said, "Stop." I stopped. He looked at Reed. Who knew you were coming here? No one. Who knew you had found the trust? No one. Who knew you had seen the invitation? Reed swallowed. Someone. Who? I don't know. Whoever took the invitation knew it was here, yes. Wolfe looked at me. Was the front door locked when you returned? Yes. Any sign of entry? No. Windows? Closed. Then the person who took it was already inside. I looked around the room. Reed stood. Someone followed me. No, Wolfe said. Then how? Someone was waiting. Reed stared at him. Where? Wolfe pointed toward the office door. Possibly there. I moved quickly. The hallway was empty. The front door was locked. The kitchen was empty. Fritz appeared from the dining room. Mr. Goodwin? Did anyone come into the house? No. Anyone leave? No. Are you sure? Very. Wolfe called from the office. Archie, I returned. He was holding the silver token. The invitation was never stolen from the desk. I frowned. Then where? Where I put it. But it was on the desk. No. I saw it. You saw an envelope. What? He opened the drawer. Inside lay the cream-colored invitation. I stared. You moved it. Yes. When? Before you left. Why? To see who would search the desk. I looked at Reed. His face had become rigid. Wolfe said, You. Reed stood abruptly. I was looking for it because I thought someone had taken it. Exactly. I knew it was important. Yes. Then why test me? Because you lied. Reed's expression changed. I did not. You told me you came here because you needed protection. I do. You also came because you wanted the invitation. No. Then why did you look for it? Reed said nothing. Wolfe reached for the bell. Police? Reed's eyes widened. No, why not? Because if the police get involved, they will kill him. Who? The man who has the name. Wolfe stared at him. What name? Reed whispered. The name written beneath the invitation. The next hour changed the case. Wolfe sent me back to the records office. I examined every surviving document connected to the Harcourt Trust. The same names appeared: Walter, Arthur Grant, Charles Carter, Thomas Reed, Samuel Pike, and one more. A name that had been blacked out in 3 documents, not erased. Black ink had been applied over it after the documents were typed. The name was 6 letters long. I photographed the pages and returned. Wolfe examined the images. Can you recover it? Maybe. Do it. I used a magnifying lens. The black ink was slightly transparent. Under the right angle of light, I could distinguish letters. The first looked like an R. The second might have been an O. The third was definitely B. Then nothing. Robert, I said. Wolfe looked up. Perhaps Robert something. Good. No. Why not? Because if it were, Reed would have said it. I stared at him. You're saying he knows the name? Yes. Then why didn't he tell us? Because he believes the name can get him killed. And you think he knows who it belongs to. I think he knows what it means. That was different. And worse. At 8 that evening, Arthur Bell arrived unexpectedly. He looked exhausted. Mr. Wolfe. Mr. Bell, I know what happened. What? Reed disappeared. I looked at Wolfe. How do you know? Bell ignored me. He's been looking for the trust. Yes, he found it. Possibly. He found the name. Wolfe leaned forward. What name? Bell's face had gone pale. The beneficiary. Who? Bell shook his head. I can't say. Why? Because Grant never knew either. That contradicted Reed, Wolfe noticed. Then why are you afraid? Bell looked at the invitation. I was told that if the invitation appeared, the beneficiary would return. Return from where? Bell whispered. The grave. Nobody spoke then. I said, that's impossible. Bell looked at me. That is what Grant believed. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Tell me everything. Bell sat. Grant established the trust because he believed someone had stolen money from a syndicate. What syndicate? Private investors. How many? 7. The 7 names. Yes. Who managed the money? Grant. Who was accused? One of the 7. Who? We never knew. Why? Because the records were altered. By whom? Bell looked at Wolfe. Grant suspected the beneficiary. The beneficiary of the trust? Yes. Why would the beneficiary steal from it? He didn't. Then who did? Bell shook his head. That was the secret. At 10:26, the telephone rang. I answered. A man's voice said, Mr. Goodwin. Who is this? You have been looking for Thomas Reed. Yes. He won't be coming back. Where is he? Safe. Who are you? Someone who knows why the invitation was written. Tell me. Ask Wolfe. The line went dead. I looked at Wolfe. He was already standing. Who? I told him. He walked to the desk. He opened the drawer. The invitation lay there. He removed it. Then he held it under the lamp. The pressure marks were visible. But there was something else, a new impression. A small crescent-shaped mark near the lower edge. Wolfe examined it. Interesting. What? The person who handled this knew exactly where to touch it, meaning the invitation was not stolen. Again, it was borrowed. By whom? Someone who wanted to see whether Reed would react. Then Reed's disappearance was staged. Perhaps, to make us believe someone is hunting him. Perhaps. Do you think he's alive? Wolfe looked at me. Yes. Why? Because a dead man is of little use to someone who wants a secret. And Reed has the secret. No. Wolfe placed the invitation on the desk. Reed has the wrong secret. I frowned. What does that mean? He believes he discovered who the beneficiary was. And he didn't? He discovered where the invitation points. Where? Wolfe's gaze settled on the card. The Harcourt house. But it was demolished. Yes, there's nothing there. That is what everyone believes. I stared at him. Then what is there? Wolfe's expression was almost satisfied. Something that was never part of the house. The following morning I drove to the Harcourt property. Nothing remained except a vacant lot bordered by an iron fence. The city had changed around it. New buildings had risen. Old ones had vanished. Traffic moved where horse carts once stood. Yet beneath the surface, according to the records, one structure remained, a basement vault. It had been excluded from the demolition permit. I found the entrance beneath a concrete service platform. The lock was old. The key Bell had brought opened it. Inside were 3 shelves. 2 were empty. The third contained a metal box. I opened it. There was no money, no $1 million, no manuscript, only a list. 7 names. 1 was Walter Grant, 1 was Charles Carter, 1 was Arthur Bell, 1 was Samuel Pike, 1 was Thomas Reed. The 6th had been burned away. The 7th was missing entirely. Beneath the list was a folded sheet. I opened it. The handwriting belonged to Walter Grant. There were only 2 sentences. The fortune belongs to the person who was never named. The invitation is not for him. It is for those who know why he disappeared. I read it twice. Then I understood why Thomas Reed had vanished. He had not found the fortune. He had found the purpose of the invitation. It was not calling the beneficiary. It was calling the people connected to his disappearance. I telephoned Wolfe. I found it. What? The place the invitation points to. Describe it. A vault beneath the Harcourt property. Contents? A list? Names? 7? Any useful? All of them. Money? No. Manuscript? No. Then what? A statement from Grant. I read it to him. There was a long silence. Finally Wolfe said, Return. I am returning, quickly. Why? Because Thomas Reed has just walked into the house. I stopped. What? Yes. How do you know I've received a message? From whom? Reed. Where is he? Wolfe's voice became very quiet. He says he has the name. I looked at the empty vault. Which name? The one that was never written. When I reached the brownstone, Reed was not there. Only Wolfe sat behind his desk. The invitation lay before him. Beside it was the silver token, and on top of the card was a fresh sheet of paper. A single name had been written on it. I looked at Wolfe. Is that it? He nodded. Who wrote it? Reed. Where is he? Gone. Again. Yes. Did he tell you anything? One sentence. What? Wolfe looked at the name. He said, now you know why Grant never wrote it. I read the name. I knew it. So did Wolfe. And suddenly, the three claimants, the missing Schmad, the vanished trust, the demolished house, the false witness, the 7 investors, and the invitation all seemed to move one step closer together. But one question remained. If the name belonged to the man at the center of the mystery, why had Reed been so afraid to speak it? Wolfe folded the paper. Mr. Goodwin. Yes? We have reached the point at which the dead begin to become more useful than the living. That sounds encouraging. It is not. He opened the drawer and put the invitation away. Tomorrow we find out who killed Walter Grant. And Reed? We find Reed first. And the $1 million? Wolfe's expression hardened. We find out whether it ever existed. I looked at the drawer. The invitation? It has done its work. Which to make 4 people reveal what they know. 4? Wolfe nodded. Bell, Carter, Reed, and the man who stole it. I looked at him. Who stole the invitation? He gave me a thin smile. The person who wanted us to believe it had been stolen. I waited. Wolfe reached for his beer. The trouble with a good deception, Archie, is that eventually someone has to believe it. And who believed this one? Thomas Reed. Why? Because he knew the wrong secret. He took a drink. And the man who knows the right one has just realized that we are getting close. Outside, New York was beginning its evening noise. Inside, Wolfe sat beneath the quiet lamps of the brownstone, with orchids sleeping upstairs and a dead financier's secret waiting downstairs in a drawer. The $1 million could wait. The name could wait. Even Thomas Reed could wait for a few hours. But the man who had spent 24 years making sure the truth remained buried had finally learned that Nero Wolfe was digging, and men who are frightened of the truth seldom remain patient for long. Chapter 5. The fortune behind the fortune. Inspector Kramer arrived at 9:12 the next morning, carrying his hat in one hand and the expression of a man who had discovered that his breakfast had been served by the police department. I was in the hall when the bell rang. I opened the door. Kramer looked at me. Morning, Archie. That depends on what? Am I smiling? No. Then I'm not. He stepped inside. Where's Wolfe? Office. Reed. Missing, I know. Then why ask? Because I like to begin every visit by confirming the facts. You're getting philosophical. I'm getting old. You don't look it. That's because you're lying. He went into the office. Wolfe was at his desk, dressed in his brown suit, with a pot of coffee on the table and a plate of sliced pears beside it. The orchids upstairs had already received their morning inspection. Kramer stopped. Good morning, Wolfe. Good morning, Inspector. Thomas Reed. Missing. How long? Since yesterday. You know where he is? No. You know why he disappeared? Yes. Kramer frowned. That's a remarkably confident answer. It is not confidence. It is deduction. Then deduce where he went. I cannot. Why? Because I do not know where he wanted to go. Kramer looked at me. He's been doing this for years, longer than you've been complaining. Kramer ignored me. I've got officers searching for Reed. Unnecessary. That's my decision, naturally. And I've got another problem. What? The Harcourt property. Wolfe's expression did not change. Kramer, you know about it? Yes. How? Mr. Goodwin found a vault there. Kramer turned toward me. You found a vault? Yes. Why wasn't I told? You've just been told. Because Wolfe wanted to examine it first. Kramer looked back at Wolfe. You can't keep evidence from the police. I did not. You sent Archie there, yes. Without informing me, yes. Why? Because if I had informed you, you would have sent 6 policemen, 3 cars, and a man with a shovel. Kramer stared at him. I hate you, I know. Kramer pulled out a chair. Tell me about the vault. I did. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked, the list? Wolfe has it. The note? Here. I handed him the copy. He read it. Then he looked at Wolfe. The fortune belongs to the person who was never named. Yes. The invitation is not for him. Correct. It's for those who know why he disappeared. Correct. Kramer sat back. That sounds like a conspiracy. It is. Who disappeared? Wolfe looked at him. That is the question. Kramer rubbed his forehead. All right. He pointed at the note. Start at the beginning. Wolfe glanced at me. Mr. Goodwin, I opened my notebook. Let's begin with Walter Grant. Walter Grant had been dead for 24 years. Yet, during the preceding week, he had occupied more of our time than many living men had managed in a lifetime. He had been born in New York. He had inherited money. He had multiplied it. He invested in property, securities, publishing ventures, private loans, and companies whose names sounded respectable enough to be boring. He had owned the Harcourt estate. He had employed Arthur Bell. He had employed Thomas Reed. He had financial dealings with the Carter family. He had known Samuel Pike. And he had died, leaving behind an estate that appeared, on paper, to have been settled without difficulty. The trouble was that paper had begun to disagree with itself. Wolfe had spent the previous night examining the financial records. Now he spread them across the desk. There were 2 fortunes, he said. Kramer frowned. 2? Yes. The $1 million, that is one. And the other? The assets concealed behind it. Kramer looked at me, I explained. The $1 million wasn't cash in a box. Then what was it? Property and securities. How much? Approximately $1 million at the time. At the time, 24 years ago. Kramer whistled. Softly. That's more now. Considerably, Wolfe said. And who owned it? No one. Kramer stared at him. What? No individual owned the trust assets outright. Then who did? The trust. That's not an answer. It is the legal answer. Kramer leaned back. Who benefited? That is the important question. Wolfe picked up a document. The trust contained 3 categories of assets. Yes. Securities. Yes. And? A condition. Kramer frowned. What condition? Wolfe handed him the document. Kramer read it. His expression changed. That's unusual. Very. What does it mean? The beneficiary could not receive the assets merely by proving identity. Then what did he have to do? Prove something else. What? That he was not responsible for the disappearance of the original beneficiary. The room became quiet. Kramer looked up. Yes. So there was another person, apparently. Who? That name has been deliberately removed from the surviving copies. Kramer looked toward me. The missing name. Yes, he put down the document. You're telling me the $1 million trust was built around someone who disappeared? Correct. And nobody knows who that person was. In fact. Kramer stared at Wolfe. Somebody knows, at least one person. Who? Wolfe said nothing. Kramer stood. I hate it when you do that. It is not my intention to entertain you. You're doing a poor job of failing. The records had been kept in 3 places. Grant's office, the Harcourt estate, and the law firm that had handled his will. The first 2 had yielded fragments. The third produced the gap. I spent most of the afternoon in the firm's archive room, surrounded by boxes that smelled of dust, paper, and lawyers. The firm had changed names twice. The building had changed owners once. The filing system had changed enough times to qualify as criminal, but the old records remained. I found Grant's first will, then the second, then the third, then the fourth. The fourth was the important one. It had been signed 8 months before his death. The will changed several provisions. It removed 2 charitable bequests, added property, revised several securities, and altered the disposition of the Harcourt assets. But between the third and fourth wills was a gap. 9 months. 9 months during which Grant's financial records were complete. His correspondence was extensive, and his business activity was unusually active. Yet the trust documents from that period were gone, not lost, gone. There was a difference. Lost records usually leave evidence of disorder. These had been removed cleanly. The file numbers remained. The pages did not. I telephoned Wolfe. I found the gap. How long? 9 months. Which months? I told him. He was silent. That period is significant, he said. Why? Because it begins after Grant's last recorded meeting with Edwin Carter and ends before the new will. Exactly. What happened during those 9 months? That is what I am trying to find. Look for payments. Already doing it. Property transfers. Already. Travel. Why? Because people sometimes leave records where they leave money. I searched. Grant had made 3 trips. 1 to Boston, 1 to Philadelphia, 1 to Albany. The Albany trip lasted 2 days. The Boston trip lasted 1. The Philadelphia trip lasted 3. But there was something strange. On the Albany trip, Grant had rented a private office. No business appointment was recorded. No meeting appeared in his diary. Yet the office had been paid for in cash. I copied the receipt. Then I found another. The same office had been rented 6 months earlier. Again by Walter Grant. Again in cash. Again, no explanation. I called Wolfe. I think I've found the hidden period. Where Albany? What? A private office Grant rented twice. Twice. Who met him? No record. Find out. How? Goodwin. Yes? People are usually more willing to discuss a dead man's private office than a living man's. That's reassuring. It was not intended to be. The office was above a shop that sold watches. The shopkeeper had inherited the business from his father. His father remembered Grant. The son remembered nothing. The father remembered a man who came twice. Always alone? I asked. No. Who came with him? A young lawyer. Name don't know. Did he stay long? Few hours. Did Grant receive visitors? One. Who? The old man frowned. Hard to remember. You've remembered Grant. Manny. That helps. He smiled. One man came both times. What? Young? Not young. Hair? Dark? Glasses? Yes. Anything else? The old man looked at me. He carried a red folder. I felt a small click. Did the folder have a name? No. Symbol, the old man thought. An eye. I stared closed eye. Yes. The invitation symbol. I thanked him. Then I asked the question that mattered. Did you ever see the man again? Yes. When? About 10 years ago. Where? Here. What did he say? Asked if Grant had ever left anything behind. No. Why? Because he frightened me. Did he give his name? The old man shook his head. Then, how did you know he was looking for Grant? He asked for the red folder. When I returned to the brownstone, Wolfe was in the orchid room. That meant he was either thinking or hiding from me. I waited. Eventually he emerged. The red folder. Yes, good. How did you know? I did not. I found a witness. Tell me I did. Wolfe listened. When I finished, he went to his desk. Where is the invitation? In the drawer. He opened it. The card was there. He placed it beside the silver token. Then he brought out the old photograph of Walter Grant. The photograph showed Grant standing outside the Harcourt house. Beside him was Charles Carter. Behind them, partially visible through a doorway, was a third man. I had seen the photograph before, but Wolfe enlarged it. The third man wore spectacles. He carried a folder, a red folder. I stared. Who is he? Wolfe shook his head. Not yet. Then how did he get into the photograph? Because Grant expected him to be there. And the invitation. Later. Meaning? Wolfe touched the black eye symbol. The invitation was designed years before it was sent. How many years? I do not know. But why? Because Grant anticipated the possibility that the truth would be buried, and he created a safeguard. Yes, waiting for someone to recognize it. Exactly. I looked at the card. So the invitation isn't new. No, how old? Wolfe examined the paper. At least 20 years. Possibly more. Yes. And someone kept it. Someone preserved it. Why? Because the condition had not been met. What condition? Wolfe looked at me. The right person had not yet appeared. Kramer returned at 6. He had brought 2 detectives. One was young. One looked as though he had been young during the Roosevelt administration. Kramer placed a file on Wolfe's desk. We found Reed's car. Where? Near the Harcourt property. Empty. Yes. Any blood? No. Signs of struggle? No. Missing. Phone? Missing. Coat? Missing. Then he left. Voluntarily. That's what it looks like. Any witnesses? 1. Who? A woman walking a dog. What did she see? Reed speaking to a man. Description? Dark coat? Glasses? She thinks so. I looked at Wolfe. The man from the photograph. The man with the red folder. She heard Reed say, "What? You were supposed to be dead." Nobody spoke. Kramer looked from me to Wolfe. "You want to explain?" Wolfe shook his head. "Not yet," Kramer sighed. "Of course." He picked up the photograph. "Who's this?" "An unidentified associate of Grant." "You know him?" "No." "You have a guess?" "Several." "Which one is useful? The one we can prove." Kramer put down the photograph. "Then prove it." Helen Carter came to the brownstone. She looked frightened. "Mr. Wolfe." "Miss Carter, I found something." She held a package. "Where?" "In my father's old effects." "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "Because I didn't know whether it was safe." Wolfe motioned toward the chair. She sat. I closed the door. "What did you find?" "A letter. From Edwin Carter."
"Yes, to whom, Grant?"
"Date? 2 weeks before my father disappeared." She handed it to Wolfe. He read it. His expression hardened. I read over his shoulder. The letter was brief. "Walter, You know the condition cannot be fulfilled while the original beneficiary remains missing. You also know that the account cannot be released merely because the proper claimant presents himself. If the name is disclosed, the wrong man will come forward first. Keep the invitation. Let the people who believe themselves entitled reveal themselves. When the right person recognizes it, you will know. I looked at Helen. Your father knew about the invitation. Yes. Who was the original beneficiary? I don't know. Did he tell you? No. Why did he write this? Helen shook her head. He was afraid. Of whom? Grant? Or someone else? She looked at Wolfe. I think Grant was afraid of him. That was unexpected. Who? My father never said. Wolfe folded the letter. Miss Carter, did your father ever mention a condition? Yes. What? He said the money could not be claimed until the truth about the missing man was established. Why? He said the trust was not designed to reward anyone. Then what was it designed to do? Helen looked at him. To expose whoever had betrayed him. That night Wolfe ate very little. Fritz sent up beef broth, toast, and a small dish of mushrooms. Wolfe ignored the mushrooms. That was how I knew he was troubled. I sat opposite him. So we have a trust. Yes. $1 million. Approximately. A missing beneficiary. Yes. A missing manuscript. Yes. A missing man. Yes. An old invitation. Yes. A red folder. Yes. And a 9-month gap. Yes. I leaned back. What happened during those 9 months? Wolfe stared toward the window. Grant discovered the betrayal. Whose betrayal? That is what we need to know. Then why create the invitation? Because he knew he might die before he could expose it. Safeguard. Exactly. He prepared the invitation, yes. Placed it somewhere safe, yes. Then waited, not quite. Why not? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Because he died before the condition was fulfilled, and the invitation survived. Yes, until now. Who found it? That is our next question. Whoever sent it? Probably. Could it be Reed? No, Helen, no. The fourth claimant? Possibly. I thought about the unidentified man. The man with the red folder. Wolfe nodded. He is central. Who is he? I suspect he has been dead for years. I stared. The same as the original beneficiary. Perhaps. Then we're chasing ghosts. Wolfe looked at the invitation. We are chasing records. At 11 the telephone rang, I answered. A woman said, Mr. Goodwin? Yes. This is Martha Grant. I looked at Wolfe. Mrs. Grant? No, Walter Grant's daughter. That was new. Where are you? I don't want to say. What do you want? I know about the invitation. How? My father showed it to me. When? The night before he died. What did he tell you? That if it ever appeared again, someone had failed. Who? I don't know. What else? He told me never to trust Arthur Bell. I glanced at Wolfe. Why? Because Bell knew where the money came from. Where? I don't know. Mrs. Grant, can you meet us? No. Why? Because someone is outside my apartment. Police? No. Describe him. Dark coat. My heart tightened. Glasses? Yes. Stay where you are. The line went dead. I reached for my coat. Wolfe stopped. Do not go. She's in danger. Yes. Then we have to help her. We will. How? He pointed toward the invitation. She has just given us the missing piece. What? The original purpose. I waited. Wolfe's voice was low. Grant did not create the invitation to find his heir. Then, why? To identify the man who would come looking for it. The betrayer. Yes. And now he has. Wolfe stood. For a man who disliked movement, he moved with surprising speed when he had decided it was necessary. Inspector Kramer. I telephoned. Kramer answered on the second ring. Wolfe, Mrs. Grant is in danger. Where? I gave him the address. Send men. Already doing it. How did you know? Because I was listening. Good. Wolfe hung up. Then he turned to me. The fortune behind the fortune is not money. What is it? The name. The beneficiary? No. The betrayer? Yes. And the invitation was waiting for him. Wolfe looked toward the dark windows. For 24 years. Kramer returned shortly after midnight. Martha Grant was safe. The man outside had escaped, but he had left something behind, a red folder. Kramer placed it on Wolfe's desk. Nobody touched it. Wolfe looked at the closed eye symbol embossed on the cover. Open it, Kramer said. Wolfe shook his head. Not yet. Why? Because whoever left it wants us to open it. Isn't that what we want? No, why not? Wolfe looked at me. Because this time the evidence is trying to lead us. He reached for the folder, but did not open it. The invitation was designed as a safeguard. Yes. The trust was designed as a trap. Yes. The missing beneficiary was the bait. Perhaps. And the man who has spent 24 years hiding the truth has finally made a mistake. Kramer folded his arms. What mistake? Wolfe's finger rested on the red folder. He has begun leaving evidence. I looked at the invitation. The closed eye seemed to watch us. Wolfe continued. The invitation was created years ago, because Grant knew the truth might be buried. He looked at Kramer. The trust was constructed so that money could not be claimed without exposing the person responsible for the disappearance. Then he looked at me, and the gap in the records marks the exact period when Grant discovered who that person was. Kramer said, "So the $1 million is bait?" "Yes." "The invitation is bait?" "Yes." "The trust is bait?" "Yes." "And the person we're after has spent 24 years taking the bait?" Wolfe nodded. "Exactly." Kramer stared at him. "Then why hasn't he been caught?" Wolfe smiled faintly. "Because until tonight, Inspector, he believed he was the fisherman." He closed the red folder. "Tomorrow we shall see whether he still believes that." Chapter 6. The room behind the ledger. The red folder remained unopened until breakfast. That was Wolfe's decision. I disagreed with it on principle, curiosity, and hunger. Curiosity, because a red folder bearing the closed-eye emblem had been placed outside the apartment of Walter Grant's daughter by a man who had spent 24 years avoiding the police. Principle, because if a man leaves a detective a mysterious folder, the proper response is to open it. Hunger, because breakfast had been delayed by all this nonsense. Wolfe disagreed with my disagreement. The folder can wait. The man who left it may not. He has waited 24 years. That doesn't mean he's patient. It means he is cautious. Or old. Wolfe looked at me. "Archie." "Yes?" "Your observations become less useful when they are hungry." "Then feed me." He rang for Fritz. 10 minutes later, coffee arrived. The red folder remained closed. I looked at it. It looked back. That was the trouble with the closed-eye symbol. It had a way of making an ordinary piece of paper seem as though it knew something. Wolfe ignored it and read the morning newspaper. I drank coffee. Finally I said, "You know what I think?" "No, you do. I know that you are about to tell me. The folder isn't the important thing." "Correct. The ledger is." Wolfe lowered the newspaper. "Why?" "Because the ledger sent us to the vault." "Yes." "And the vault sent us to the trust." "Yes." "And the trust sent us to the missing beneficiary." "Yes." "So the next thing should be another record." Wolfe folded the newspaper. "Go on." "Grant was an accountant's kind of man. He didn't trust memory when he could trust paper." "That is a reasonable assumption. If he discovered a fraud, he would record it. Unless the record itself endangered him, then he'd hide it." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Where? Somewhere connected to the accounting." "Which means?" "The ledger." He pressed the bell. "Mr. Goodwin." "Yes?" "Find the room behind the ledger." I stood. "That sounds ominous." "It is merely inconvenient." The reference appeared in a book that seemed designed to discourage investigation. It was a large leather-bound accounting ledger, brown with age, cracked along the spine and filled with Grant's neat handwriting. The entries were ordinary: income, expenses, property, securities, loans, taxes, dividends, transfers, nothing remarkable. Then, near the end, I found a page numbered 317. There was no entry. Instead, at the bottom of the page, Grant had written, "See Room B, Ledger 4. I checked the index. There was no Room B. I checked Ledger 4. It existed. It contained nothing but property maintenance expenses. I examined the pages again. At the bottom of page 317 was another notation, almost invisible beneath a smear of ink. "Not here." I took the ledger back to Wolfe. He read the page. "Room B." "Yes." "Where was the ledger kept?" "In Grant's office." "Which office?" "The main office." "How many?" "4." "Any?" "Room B, no." "Then the reference is not architectural." Wolfe touched the page. "Accounting." "Room B means a classification." "Of what?" "Assets." He opened another ledger. I watched. Grant had divided assets into 4 categories, A, B, C, D. The B category was property held through private arrangements. Harcourt was there. So were 6 other properties. But one had been crossed out. I copied the address. "That's an office building." Was. It was demolished." "Again, yes." Wolfe looked at me. "The people who destroy records often destroy buildings too." Where's the replacement? He gave me the address. Standing. The building was on a narrow street downtown, wedged between two newer structures. It had survived because nobody had yet found a profitable reason to kill it. The lobby smelled of dust and old heating pipes. I spoke to the superintendent. Grant owned this building long ago. Do you have old records? Why? I'm looking for a room. Which room? Room B, he laughed. There isn't one, was there? He stopped laughing. Maybe? When? Years ago. What was it? Private office. Who used it? Nobody. Nobody? Not officially. That word was enough. Can I see it? No. I showed him my card. He frowned. I don't care who you are. I understand. I put a bill on the desk. He cared. 3rd floor. Where? End of the hall. Locked? Usually. And today? He shrugged. Maybe. The room had been sealed for 22 years. The lock was old. The key wasn't. Someone had opened it recently. Inside stood a desk, a chair, a filing cabinet, and a wall safe. Dust covered everything except the cabinet handle. Someone had been there. Recently I entered. The room was small, no windows, one electric bulb, a narrow ventilation opening. The desk contained nothing. The safe was empty. The filing cabinet was locked. I forced the first drawer. Nothing. Second, old invoices. Third, ledgers. I pulled them out. There were 6. The first concerned property. The second securities. The third loans. The fourth taxes. The fifth trusts. The sixth was blank. Not empty. Blank. Every page had been removed. I called Wolfe. I found it. A describe. Office. Records. 6 ledgers. Useful. One is missing its pages. Which? Trust. Silence. Bring them. All. Yes. I gathered the ledgers. Then I noticed something beneath the desk. A brass plate. Same size as the one Archie had found at the Harcourt Theatre. But this one bore a number. I stared at it. The page. The room. The plate. Everything connected. I called Wolfe again. There's a plate. What number? 370s, and he was silent. Mr. Goodwin. Yes? Do not touch it. Too late. I had already lifted it. Beneath the plate was a key. Small, old, brass, and stamped with a closed eye. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe examined the key. The emblem. Yes. Where was it? Under the plate. Then the room was intended to be found. By whom? Someone who knew the ledger. I placed the ledgers on the table. Wolfe opened the trust ledger. The first pages were routine. The second section was not. There were transfers made after Grant's death. That was impossible. Or nearly. Grant died in October. The trust was altered in November, again in January, again in March. The signatures were not Grant's, but the authorization codes were his. I stared. Yes. Who had the codes? Arthur Bell. I looked up. You're sure? Bell managed the financial records. Could someone else have known them? Certainly. Then Bell isn't necessarily guilty. No, but he knew. Yes. How long? Wolfe turned a page. Long before the invitation. There it was. A notation from 7 years after Grant's death. Bell confirms continuation of reserve. Below it was another line. Do not disclose source. I stared. 7 years after Grant died. Yes. Bell was still managing the reserve. Apparently. Then he knew the fortune existed. Yes, before the invitation appeared. Exactly. I felt a chill. The invitation wasn't telling Bell about the fortune. No, it was testing him. Yes, to see whether he would react. Yes. Wolfe closed the ledger. Now you understand. Kramer came at noon. He brought bad news. Reed is still missing. Expected. I don't appreciate that. I did not ask you to. Kramer put a photograph on the desk. We found this in Reed's room. It showed a page from an old ledger. I recognized it. The trust. Yes. Where was it? In a suitcase. Locked? Yes. Opened? Yes. Kramer looked at Wolfe. You've been examining the same records? Yes. Anything much? Then tell me. Wolfe gestured toward the ledger. Someone altered the trust after Grant died. Kramer stared. Who? We do not yet know. Who had access? Several people. Bell? Yes. Possibly. Helen Carter? Less likely. Kramer pointed at the photograph. And this? Proof that Reed was searching the same material. Meaning? Meaning he knew the trust had been altered. Could he have altered it? Possibly. Kramer sighed. Every time I think I'm getting closer, you add another door. There are always doors. You're enjoying this. No, you're lying. Yes. I spent the afternoon reconstructing the trust accounts. The original balance was approximately $1 million. The first posthumous transfer removed a small amount. The second removed more. The third transferred securities. The fourth transferred property. By the end of the first year, nearly 40% of the assets had been moved, yet the trust's official balance remained unchanged. The fraud was elegant. The money disappeared. The numbers did not. Someone had altered the ledgers so that the trust appeared intact while the assets were quietly transferred elsewhere. I made a list. Transfer 1, Transfer 2, Transfer 3, Transfer 4, all went through a private account. The account holder's name was missing, but the bank code remained. I called the bank. The clerk checked. That account was closed. When? 20 years ago. Who opened it? I can't tell you. Why? Record sealed. By whom? He hesitated. Arthur Bell. I put down the telephone. There it was again. Bell. That evening, Arthur Bell came to the brownstone. He looked older than he had 2 days earlier. He sat opposite Wolfe. You know. About what? The trust. Yes, the accounts. Yes, the transfers. Yes. Bell closed his eyes. I knew. Kramer, who was sitting by the window, leaned forward. You knew what? Bell looked at him. I knew money was being moved. By whom? I don't know. Where? I don't know. You expect us to believe that? Bell's face tightened. I was instructed. By whom? Walter Grant. After his death? No. Before? Yes. What did he tell you? That the trust had to remain intact. Kramer looked puzzled. While money was being removed? Not removed. Transferred. Yes. To whom? Bell shook his head. Grant never told me. Wolfe asked. Did you know about the beneficiary? Bell hesitated. Yes. Who? I never knew the name. You knew there was one. Yes. You knew the trust could not be claimed without proving a condition. Yes. You knew the invitation existed. Bell looked at Wolfe. Yes. When? 20 years ago. I leaned back. There it was. The truth. The invitation was not new. Bell had known about it. The others might have discovered fragments. Bell had known the mechanism. Why didn't you tell us? I asked. Bell looked at me. Because Grant ordered me never to. Yes. And you obeyed. Until the invitation appeared. Why did you come? Because I knew what it meant, Wolfe asked quietly. What did it mean? Bell stared at the floor. That someone had activated the safeguard. Who? I don't know. Then why were you frightened? Because the invitation wasn't meant for the beneficiary. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. What was it meant for? Bell whispered. The guilty man. Nobody moved. Kramer broke the silence. You knew that all along? Bell nodded. Then why did you claim it belonged to you? Because I wanted to know who else would come. 3 claimants. Yes. Why? Because Grant told me there would be. Kramer looked at Wolfe. Wolfe looked at Bell. How many people did Grant expect? Bell answered. 4. I felt a chill. 4. Yes. Who is the 4th? Bell looked toward the door. The man who took the original beneficiary's place. What does that mean, no? You're lying, no. Wolfe watched him. Mr. Bell, you know more than you have said. I know enough to be afraid. Bell swallowed. The man with the red folder. Later that night, Wolfe returned to the ledger. He placed the invitation beside it. Then the brass key, then the silver token. 3 objects, 3 clues, 3 deliberate pieces of a mechanism. He studied them. The invitation was designed to expose the person who would react to it. Yes. Not the person entitled to the fortune. Yes. Not the heir. Yes. The reaction itself is the evidence. Exactly. I looked at the ledger. Bell reacted. Yes. Reed disappeared. Yes. Helen searched the records. Yes. And the 4th man. Wolfe's expression hardened. He sent us the red folder. So he reacted too. Yes. Then the invitation worked. Precisely. But what does the fortune have to do with it? Wolfe looked at me. Nothing. The fortune is the bait. For the man who believes he owns it and the trust. A trap and the invitation. A test and the 3 claimants. Participants and the missing beneficiary. The reason. I waited. Wolfe reached for the brass key. The only thing we have not yet opened is the room behind the ledger. I looked at him. We already found the room. No. He held up the key. We found the door. At midnight, we returned to the private office. Kramer came with us. The building was dark. The superintendent let us in. We climbed to the 3rd floor. The room waited exactly as I had left it. Dust, desk, cabinet, safe. Wolfe examined the wall. Where? I showed him the brass key. He inserted it into a small lock concealed beneath the desk. Something clicked. A section of the wall moved. Behind it was another compartment. Inside sat a narrow black ledger, and beneath it, a photograph. I lifted the photograph. It showed Walter Grant, Edwin Carter, Arthur Bell, Thomas Reed, and the man with the red folder, but this time the man's face was visible. I knew him. So did Cromer. Cromer swore softly. Wolfe said nothing. I turned the photograph over. A sentence had been written on the back. If this room is opened, the invitation has worked. Below it was a date, 24 years earlier. Wolfe took the black ledger. He opened it. The first page contained only one sentence. The fortune was never the objective. The second contained a list of names. The third contained a payment schedule. The fourth contained a final note. When the invitation returns, watch Arthur Bell. I looked at Wolfe. He read it again. Then he closed the ledger. Why Bell? I asked. Wolfe's face was unreadable. Because he is the only claimant who knew the invitation existed before it appeared. Kramer said, so he's the one the safeguard was meant to expose. Not necessarily. Then who? Wolfe looked at the photograph. The person Bell was protecting. I stared at the man with the red folder. Who is he? Wolfe turned the photograph toward the light. On the man's lapel was a small pin, a closed eye. I felt the pieces shift. The emblem. Yes, he belonged to the group. Yes. Who? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. That is what the black ledger will tell us. He opened it again. But before he could turn the page, the lights went out. Kramer reached for his revolver. I heard a door slam somewhere below. Then footsteps. Running, Wolfe said calmly. Mr. Goodwin. Yes? Do not pursue him. Why? Because he wants us to. Kramer cursed. Then what do we do? Wolfe held the black ledger against his chest. We let him run. Why? Because the room has already told us what he fears. What? Wolfe looked at the photograph. Records. The emergency lights flickered on. The room was empty. The door stood open. Whoever had entered had taken nothing. Not the photograph, not the ledger, not the key. Nothing. Wolfe smiled. Interesting. I stared at him. He broke in and stole nothing. Exactly. Then what did he want? Wolfe closed the ledger. To see whether we had found it. And now he knows. Yes, that seems bad. It is useful. How? Because now he knows we have the records. And we know he knows. Correct. So what happens next? Wolfe looked at the photograph one more time. The man who spent 24 years hiding the truth will have to decide whether to run or destroy it. Kramer picked up his hat. Which will he choose? Wolfe's answer was immediate. Destroy it. Why? Because running would admit guilt. He handed me the black ledger. Bring this. Where? Home. Why? Because tomorrow we open the ledger. And then, Wolfe's eyes settled on the closed eye emblem. Then we learn which of the three claimants has been lying about the fortune. I nodded. And the fourth man? Wolfe looked toward the empty doorway. He has already told us. What? That he is afraid. Kramer sighed. Afraid of what? Wolfe picked up his coat. The truth. He turned toward the stairs. And when a guilty man becomes afraid of a ledger, Archie, he usually makes one mistake. What mistake? Wolfe paused. He tries to make the book disappear. We left the room. Behind us, the hidden compartment remained open. The dust had been disturbed. The black ledger was gone. And somewhere in New York, a man who had successfully concealed a fortune, a murder, and a missing name for 24 years, had just learned that one old accounting book had survived him. Chapter 7. Wolfe calls the three together. By 10 o'clock the next morning, Nero Wolfe had converted his office into a courtroom, without a judge, a jury, or any legal authority whatsoever. He had moved his desk lamp to the center of the room. He had placed the cream-colored invitation beneath it. The black ledger lay closed at his right hand. The photograph of Walter Grant, Edwin Carter, Arthur Bell, Thomas Reed, and the man with the red folder lay beside it. And on a small table stood 3 glasses, a bottle of beer, and a plate of sandwiches. Wolfe had also ordered Fritz to prepare lunch. That was how I knew we were going to be there for a while. Who is coming? I asked. Bell? Cutter? Yes. Reed? Inspector Kramer is bringing him. I looked at the clock. Where did Kramer find him? At a railway hotel. Reed was hiding there. Did he explain why? No. Did Kramer ask? Naturally. And he received an answer. What answer? Wolfe looked at me. Reed said he was waiting for a train. To where? He did not say. That's useful. It is sufficient. I picked up the invitation. What's the plan? Wolfe looked offended. There is no plan. Then what is this? A conclusion? Those usually come after plans, only among amateurs. I put the invitation down. The closed eye emblem caught the light. You're going to accuse someone? No. Arrest someone? No. Reveal the truth? Yes. Same thing practically. No. He settled into his chair. Mr. Goodwin, today we shall not accuse anyone. We shall merely remove the alternatives until one person remains. Precisely, that's the plan. No, Wolfe. He closed his eyes. It is the method. Arthur Bell arrived first. He entered at 11:15. He looked as though he had slept badly and regretted having done so. Mr. Wolfe, Mr. Bell. Bell looked at the invitation. Is it the original? Yes. His eyes remained on it. You found the ledger? Yes. Bell's face tightened. Then you know some of it. What do you want from me? Nothing. Then why am I here? To hear the truth. Bell looked at me. Who's yours? He sat. I took my chair. Wolfe said nothing. That was worse than questions. Bell shifted. Finally he said, I did not kill Walter Grant. Wolfe nodded. I know. I didn't steal the money. I know. I didn't alter the trust. Wolfe looked at him. That statement is more interesting. Bell's face tightened. I had nothing to do with it. Then why did you know the invitation existed? Grant told me. When? Before he died. How long before? Months. Why? Because he was afraid. Of whom? Looked toward the window. I never knew. You saw the man with the red folder. Yes. You knew his name. No. You knew what he wanted. Bell hesitated. Yes. What? Access to the trust. Why? Because he believed he was entitled to it, was he? No. Then why did Grant fear him? Bell swallowed. Because he knew where the money had gone. I leaned forward. Where? Bell looked at Wolfe. I never knew. Wolfe's expression remained calm. You are still protecting him. Bell shook his head. I am protecting myself. That is not the same thing. No. Wolfe opened the black ledger. He turned to a page. Read this. Bell leaned forward. His eyes moved across the page. He went pale. What is that? The transfer authorization. I've never seen it. Your signature is on it. Bell stared. No. Your initials. Someone forged them, perhaps. I didn't authorize this. I believe you. Bell looked relieved. Then Wolfe added, but you knew about it. Bell's relief vanished. I suspected. When? After Grant died. How long after? 3 months, and you did nothing. I was afraid. Of the man who altered the accounts? Yes. Why? Because he knew about my family. What did he know? Bell said nothing. Wolfe closed the ledger. That will do for now. Bell stared at him. Why did you bring me here? You will understand. Helen Carter arrived 20 minutes later. She carried no handbag. That was unusual. Helen was normally careful with appearances. Today she looked tired. She saw Bell, then Reed's empty chair. Where is Thomas? On his way. Is he safe? Kramer entered behind her. He is now. Helen turned. Kramer gave her a nod. Miss Carter. Inspector, sit. She did. Kramer remained by the door. Wolfe looked at all of us. 3 people. He pointed toward Bell. Mr. Bell. Then toward Helen. Miss Carter. Then toward the empty chair. Miss Reed. Each believed the invitation might belong to him. Helen said, I never claimed it belonged to me. No, you said I was one of the claimants. Because you acted like one. She frowned. What did I do? You searched for your father's letter. Yes. You searched for Grant's correspondence. Yes. You asked about the trust. Yes. Why? Because I believed my father was involved. Not because you wanted the money? Wolfe nodded. Lee Bell looked at her. I don't. She turned. Why? You knew more than you admitted. I knew my father had been frightened. You knew about the invitation. No, Bell said. You knew. Helen's voice hardened. I knew my father had mentioned it. To you, once, then you knew. Knowing it existed isn't knowing what it means. Wolfe raised one hand. Enough. They stopped. I watched Wolfe. He looked almost bored. That was always a bad sign. At noon the front door opened. Kramer entered with Thomas Reed. Reed looked thinner. His coat was wrinkled. He carried a small suitcase. He stopped when he saw Bell and Helen. I expected this. Kramer shut the door. Then don't make trouble. I won't, Reed sat. Wolfe examined him. You stayed at a railway hotel. Yes. Why? I wanted to leave New York. Why didn't you? Because I didn't know where to go. That is not an answer. It is the truth. Who was following you? I don't know. The man with the red folder? Reed looked at Bell, then at Wolfe. Yes. Did you see him? Once. Where? Outside the station. Did he speak? No. Then how do you know it was him? He held the folder. That proves nothing. The emblem did. What did he do? He looked at me. He smiled. Why? Because he knew I had found the ledger. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Did he take it? No. Did he ask for it? No. Then what did he want? Reed looked toward the invitation. Me. Wolfe sat back. The three claimants were now in the room. Bell, Carter, Reed. Each had lied. Each had concealed something. Each had reacted to the invitation, and each had a different reason. Wolfe opened the black ledger. The invitation was not an offer. Bell looked at him. It wasn't? No. It promised $1 million. Yes, then what was it? A test. Helen frowned. A test for whom? Anyone who believed the promise. Reed leaned forward. What did you test? Wolfe looked at him. Knowledge. Silence. Each of you knew something about Walter Grant. He looked at Bell. You knew the financial structure. At Helen. You knew the correspondence. At Reed. You knew the property. None of you knew everything. He placed the invitation beneath the lamp. That was deliberate. The three watched him. The invitation contained no name, Helen said, because the writer wanted the right person to recognize it. No. Then why? Because the writer wanted the wrong people to reveal themselves. Bell shifted. Wolfe noticed. Bell. Yes, you recognized the paper. Yes. You recognized the emblem. You knew immediately that the invitation was connected to Grant. Yes, yet you claimed you were uncertain. No. Wolfe's voice sharpened. You were not uncertain. Bell looked down. You were afraid. Bell said nothing. Wolfe turned to Helen. You recognized the wording from my father's letter. Yes. You therefore understood that the invitation concerned the trust. Yes. But you did not know the condition. No. Correct. Then, Wolfe turned to Reed. You recognized the location, the Harcourt property. Yes. You knew the trust had been connected to the property. Yes. But you did not understand why. Reed shook his head. Not at first. Exactly. Wolfe leaned back. Each of you was given only enough information to tempt you, I said. And the fourth man? Wolfe looked at the photograph. The fourth man was given everything. Kramer stepped forward. Who is he? Wolfe did not answer immediately. He opened the photograph. His name was Victor Hale. Reed stiffened. Bell closed his eyes. Helen whispered, Hale. I looked at her. You know him? My father mentioned him. Kramer said, who was he? An attorney, Wolfe said. Grant's attorney? No. Then whose? Grant's rival. Kramer frowned. That doesn't tell me much. It will. Wolfe opened the ledger. Hale represented a private investment group, the 7 investors. Yes. Was he the beneficiary? No. Then what did he want? The trust? Why? Because he had already diverted a portion of its assets. Kramer looked at Bell. Bell stared at the floor. Wolfe continued. Hale created the false account. He had help. Wolfe nodded. Yes. Who? Arthur Bell. Bell looked up. No. Wolfe's eyes hardened. You did not create the fraud. I didn't. You maintained it. Bell swallowed. I was forced. By Hale. Yes, because he threatened your family. Bell said nothing. Kramer looked at him. Why didn't you tell the police? Because Hale had proof that I had helped transfer the money. Even though you were coerced, I had signed the papers. Under pressure. It didn't matter. Wolfe nodded. It mattered to Grant. Bell looked at him. Grant discovered the fraud. Yes. He confronted Hale. Yes. Then what happened? Bell looked at the floor. Hale killed him. Kramer straightened. You knew? I suspected. Did you see it? Bell hesitated. Yes. Kramer swore. You were there. I was. And you let him walk away. I was afraid. You watched a murder. I had a family. Kramer looked ready to explode. Wolfe raised a hand. Inspector. Kramer stopped. Wolfe turned to Bell. What did Hale do with the trust after Grant died? He continued the transfers. Using your authorization. Yes. And then? He disappeared. Not disappeared. Bell looked at him. He changed his name. Wolfe nodded. Yes, Kramer said. What name? Wolfe looked at the photograph. Samuel Pike. The room became silent. I remembered the list. Samuel Pike. One of the 7 names. But he was not an investor. He was the man who had supposedly died years before, I said. The missing beneficiary. Wolfe nodded. No. I frowned. Then who? The missing beneficiary was Hale's victim. The door opened. Fritz appeared. Mr. Wolfe, there is a telephone call. Who? He says his name is Samuel Pike. Kramer reached for his weapon. Wolfe remained seated. Put it through. Fritz disappeared. Telephone rang. I answered. A man's voice said, Mr. Wolfe. Yes. You have found the ledger. Yes. You know about Hale. Yes. You know about Grant. Yes. You know about the beneficiary. Yes. There was a pause. Then you know why I disappeared. Wolfe took the receiver from me. No. Silence. Because you are not the beneficiary. Another silence. Who are you? Wolfe's eyes remained on the photograph. Edwin Carter. Helen gasped. I stared. Her father, the dead man, the missing man, the supposed victim, alive. Wolfe continued. You allowed everyone to believe you were dead. Yes. Why? Because Hale believed he had killed me. Why did he? Because he needed me gone. And Grant? Grant was trying to protect me. Wolfe's face became very still. You were the original beneficiary, yes. Then the fortune belongs to you. No. Why? Because Grant changed the condition. What condition? Anyone claiming the fortune had to prove who killed him. Wolfe nodded. And you have been waiting, 24 the invitation. Yes. Did you send it? No. Who did? Silence. Then Edwin Carter said, Arthur Bell. All eyes turned toward Bell. Bell closed his eyes. Wolfe said, Thank you. The line went dead. Bell looked up. I had no choice. Kramer stepped forward. You sent the invitation. Yes. Why? Because I knew Hale had returned. How? He contacted me. When? Months ago. Why? Did you give it to him? No. Then why? Send the invitation. Bell looked at Wolfe. Because Grant's safeguard required witnesses. Wolfe nodded. Bell's voice shook. I knew Hale would come if he believed the fortune was available, and he did. Yes, you knew the invitation would bring Carter. I hoped. Reed? I expected. I didn't know. Wolfe said. And that is why you were never the rightful claimant. Bell looked at him. The invitation was designed to expose whoever reacted to it. Yes, you knew it would. Yes, you therefore sent it. Yes, and Hale reacted. Bell nodded. That was the point. Kramer looked at Wolfe. So the invitation worked. Perfectly. Then why did Reed disappear? Bell answered. Because Hale found him. Why? He thought Reed had the final evidence. Did he? Reed looked at Wolfe. No, Wolfe said. The final evidence was never with Reed. I understood. The ledger. Yes, the room. Yes, the black ledger was the final piece. Correct. And Reed's disappearance was staged. Wolfe nodded. Hale wanted us to believe Reed had vanished with the evidence, but Reed didn't have it. No, he knew where it was. Exactly, which made him useful, and therefore dangerous. Kramer paced the room. So where is Hale? Wolfe looked toward the window. On his way here. Kramer stopped. What? Wolfe nodded toward the telephone. He called. Why? Because he believes we have the ledger. And we do, yes. So he'll come, yes. Here? Eventually. I looked at Wolfe. How do you know? Because the invitation promised $1 million. And Hale believes it. No, Wolfe smiled faintly. He believes the invitation promises something more valuable. What? His survival? The front doorbell rang. Everyone stopped. Fritz's footsteps sounded in the hall. Then his voice, Mr. Wolfe. Yes, there is a gentleman here. Name. A pause. Samuel Pike. Kramer reached for his weapon. Wolfe remained perfectly still. Send him in. The door opened. A gray-haired man entered. He carried no red folder. He wore spectacles. His face was older than the photograph, but unmistakable. Victor Hale. He looked at the three claimants, then at Kramer, then at Wolfe. Finally at the invitation, he smiled. I see you have been busy. Wolfe said yes. Hale looked at the black ledger. You found it. Yes. You know everything. No. Hale smiled. Then perhaps we can make a bargain. Wolfe shook his head. There will be no bargain. Hale's smile faded. Why? Because you have already made the only bargain that mattered. What bargain? Wolfe touched the invitation. You came. Hale stared at him, then at the closed-eye emblem. For the first time, fear appeared in his face. Wolfe leaned back. That was the purpose of the invitation. Hale said nothing. Wolfe continued. Not to find the heir. He looked at Bell. Not to expose the innocent. He looked at Helen. Not to frighten the curious. He looked at Reed. Not even to recover the missing evidence. Then Wolfe looked directly at Hale. It was designed to make the guilty man come looking for it. The room was silent. Kramer stepped forward. Hale did not move. Wolfe opened the black ledger. The final performance, Mr. Hale, begins now. And for the first time since the cream-colored envelope had arrived at the brownstone, nobody in the room was wondering who the invitation belonged to. They knew. The question was what it had been waiting to reveal. Chapter 8. The $1 million Answer. At 9 o'clock the following morning, the brownstone was quiet enough to make me suspicious. Quiet in Wolfe's office was never merely quiet. It meant that Wolfe had reached a point in his thinking at which interruption was considered an offense against civilization. He was in his chair. The black ledger lay open on his desk. The cream-colored invitation rested beside it. The photograph of Walter Grant and the other men was propped against the lamp. Outside, New York was beginning its daily argument with itself. Horns sounded on the avenue. A delivery truck complained at the curb. Somewhere down the block, a man was shouting about newspapers. Inside, Wolfe had arranged a small breakfast: eggs, toast, coffee, and, for reasons known only to him, a single peach. I entered carrying a fresh copy of the morning paper. Any sleep? No. Any breakfast? Yes. Any conclusions? Several. Any chance of sharing one? He looked at me. I have been sharing conclusions with you for 7 chapters. Then one more won't bankrupt you. He returned his attention to the ledger. Mr. Goodwin. Yes? The $1 million was never the mystery. I know. It was the bait. I know. The invitation was the mechanism. I know. The missing name was the test. I know. He looked at me again. You have become intolerable. I've been intolerable for years. That is why I employ you. I sat down. All right. Give me the final answer. Wolfe closed the ledger. Not yet. Why? Because the final answer should be given in the presence of everyone who has earned the right to hear it. Meaning, the people involved in the matter. All of them? Yes. Even Hale. Especially Hale. I looked toward the closed door. Victor Hale was under guard downstairs. He had spent the night in a room at the brownstone under the supervision of 2 of Kramer's men. Arthur Bell was in the library. Helen Carter was upstairs with a cup of coffee. Thomas Reed was in the dining room. Inspector Kramer was somewhere in the hall, probably making the furniture nervous. And Edwin Carter was waiting in the rear room, alive, 24 years after the world had accepted him as dead. I looked at Wolfe. You've arranged quite a breakfast. It is not breakfast. What is it? A conclusion. At 10, Wolfe rang the bell. Fritz entered. Bring them. Fritz nodded. One by one they came in. Kramer first. Then Arthur Bell, Helen Carter, Thomas Reed, Edwin Carter. Finally Victor Hale, escorted by 2 officers. Hale looked around the room. The brownstone office had changed little since the previous night. The orchids were visible through the open door to the plant room. The air smelled faintly of coffee and tobacco. Wolfe's desk dominated the room. The invitation lay in the center. Hale looked at it. His face tightened. Kramer noticed. So you do recognize it? Hale smiled faintly. I have seen it before. Wolfe said, naturally. Bell stood near the window. Helen sat beside him. Reed remained near the door. Edwin Carter had chosen a chair where he could see everyone. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Kramer said, All right, Wolfe. Wolfe looked at him. You wanted everyone here. Yes, then talk. Wolfe nodded. Very well. He placed both hands on the arms of his chair. The case began with an invitation. He looked at me. Mr. Goodwin received a cream-colored envelope, I said. Correct. It promised access to a fortune of approximately $1 million. Correct. It contained no address. It nevertheless found its way to my house. Yes, Wolfe turned toward the others. That was the first deception. Hale smiled. Deception? Yes. The invitation was genuine. Certainly. Then what was deceptive? The promise. Hale's smile disappeared. Wolfe continued. The invitation never promised that the recipient would simply be given $1 million. It promised access to a fortune. There is an important distinction. Kramer nodded. Go on. The fortune was not cash waiting in an account. It consisted of property, securities, and other assets placed into a trust created by Walter Grant. He opened the black ledger. The trust was established under unusual conditions. Helen said quietly. The beneficiary had to establish what happened to the original beneficiary. Wolfe looked at her. Yes. Hale glanced at her. Wolfe noticed. That was one of the things you feared, Mr. Hale. Hale said nothing. Wolfe continued. 24 years ago, Walter Grant discovered that assets belonging to his trust were being diverted through a private account. He lifted one sheet. The transfers were concealed by keeping the trust's reported balance unchanged. Kramer said. So the books showed the money was still there, exactly, while it was being moved elsewhere. Yes, by Hale. Wolfe looked at Hale. Primarily, Hale smiled. Mr. de Bell was compelled to assist. Bell lowered his head. I had no choice. Kramer looked at him. You should have gone to the police. I know, but you didn't.
Why?
Bell's voice was quiet. Because Hale knew where my family lived. Hale said that is a convenient story. Bell turned. You threatened my wife. I threatened nobody. You sent the letter. I sent many letters. Bell stepped forward. Kramer stopped him. Wolfe said, Mr. Bell. Bell stopped. Wolfe's voice was calm. Your confession is not necessary. Bell looked at him. You were not the architect, no. But you were the accountant, yes. You knew the codes, yes. You knew the transfers, yes. You knew that the trust was being manipulated, yes. And you knew the invitation existed. Bell nodded. Yes. Wolfe looked toward Kramer. That is why Mr. Bell became the first of our three claimants. Kramer frowned. Explain. Wolfe picked up the invitation. The first claimant was Mr. Bell. Bell looked at the card. The second was Miss Carter. Helen nodded. The third was Mr. Reed. Reed remained silent. They appeared to have three different reasons for believing the invitation concerned them. Wolfe raised one finger. Mr. Bell knew about the financial structure. A second finger. Miss Carter knew about the correspondence. A third. Mr. Reed knew about the Harcourt property. He lowered his hand. Each possessed one fragment of Grant's secret, Hale said. None possessed the whole, correct? Then why did you believe any of them was entitled to the fortune? I did not. Hale looked at him. What? Wolfe smiled faintly. I never believed any of the three was the intended recipient, Kramer said. Then why bring them together? Because their reactions mattered. Wolfe placed the invitation on the desk. The invitation was constructed as a test. Hale's expression changed. The missing name was deliberate. Yes. Why? Because a written name would have eliminated the need for recognition. Hale said nothing. Wolfe continued. Grant had a private system of references. He used phrases in letters, account books, and property memoranda that meant nothing to outsiders, but were unmistakable to those who had been involved in his affairs. He turned toward Edwin Carter. Mr. Carter knew one of those references. Carter nodded. The phrase about the winter account. Yes. Why? Because Grant and I created it together. Wolfe looked at the invitation. The invitation contained that reference, Hale said. I never saw it. You did. When? Years ago. Hale shook his head. No. Wolfe looked at him. You saw it in Grant's office. Hale said nothing. At the time you believed it was merely a private phrase. It was. No. It was a marker. For what? For the original beneficiary. Edwin Carter looked at Wolfe. Grant told me that if the invitation ever appeared without my name, I would know it was genuine. Helen turned toward her father. You knew? Carter nodded. I knew. Then why didn't you come forward? Carter looked at his daughter. Because I was supposed to be dead. The room became still. Wolfe turned toward Edwin Carter. Your disappearance was not a kidnapping. No, it was not an accident. No, it was not murder. No, you allowed the world to believe you were dead. Yes, because Hale believed you, possessed the evidence that could expose him. Carter nodded. And because he believed he had killed you. Yes. Kramer looked at Hale. Did you? Hale did not answer. Wolfe said. Hale believed Carter had been killed during the confrontation at the Harcourt property. Carter spoke. I was wounded. How badly? Badly enough to make the story believable. And Grant helped you disappear. Yes. Why? Because Grant knew Hale would come after me. And Grant? Carter looked down. He was going to expose him. Wolfe nodded. He prepared the trust. Yes. He altered the conditions. Yes. He created the invitation. Yes. Kramer said. Then why did Hale survive? Wolfe looked at him. Because Grant died before he could complete the plan. How? Hale confronted him. Yeah, then? Wolfe looked toward Hale. Mr. Hale? Hale remained silent. Wolfe did not press him. Instead, he said, the murder itself is not the most difficult part of the case. Kramer stared. What isn't? The concealment. Wolfe opened the black ledger. After Grant's death, the trust remained apparently intact. He turned a page. In reality, the assets continued to move. Another page. Bell maintained the false accounting. Bell said quietly, "Under threat." "Yes." "Who authorized the transfers?" "Hale." "Who received the money?" "Hale's investment group." "Who controlled the group?" "Hale." Kramer looked at Hale. "Where is the money now?" Wolfe answered. "Much of it was converted into property." "Which property?" "Harcourt." Kramer frowned. "The theater." "Yes, the abandoned theater, not merely a theater." Wolfe turned another page. The Harcourt property was divided through a series of holding arrangements. He looked at Reed. "Mr. Reed was employed as estate manager because he was expected to protect those arrangements." Reed nodded. "I did not know the whole truth." "You knew enough to become suspicious." "Yes." "You discovered the altered ownership records." "Yes." "You found the brass plate." "Yes." "You found the ledger reference." "Yes." "And then you disappeared." Reed looked at Kramer. "I was afraid." "Were you taken?" "Not exactly." "What does that mean?" Reed said. "Hale approached me." Kramer looked at him. "He offered me money." "How much?" "Enough to leave the country." "Did you accept?" "No." "Why?" Reed looked at Wolfe. "Because I knew what the money was. Blood money." Reed nodded. "So you went to the railway hotel?" "Yes." "Why?" "I intended to leave." "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" "Because I received a message." "From whom?" "Mr. Carter." Edwin Carter nodded. "I told him to wait." "Why?" "Because Wolfe had the invitation." I looked at Wolfe. That was the part I had not understood. The invitation had not simply brought everyone together. It had created a chain of reactions. Bell reacted because he knew the mechanism. Helen reacted because she recognized her father's connection. Reed reacted because he knew the Harcourt property. Carter waited because he knew the private reference. And Hale reacted because he believed the fortune was within reach. Wolfe said, "That was the beauty of Grant's design." Kramer said, "Beauty? Yes. You call this beautiful, the mechanism." Kramer sighed. "Of course," Wolfe continued. "Grant could not safely name Carter." "Why?" "Because Hale would have known immediately that Carter was alive. So he left the name blank." "Exactly." "The intended recipient had to recognize the wording." "Yes." "Which Carter did." "Yes." "Then why send the invitation to your house?" I answered. "Because the invitation had to reach someone outside the original circle." Kramer looked at me. "Why?" "To ensure the investigation could not be controlled by the people who had been hiding the truth." Wolfe nodded. "Correct. The invitation needed an independent witness." "Yes. And that was you." "I was merely the envelope's recipient. You became the investigator." "With Wolfe." "Precisely," Wolfe said. "Grant's safeguard required an outsider." He looked at Hale. Someone Hale could not predict. Hale's face remained hard. "So you used Goodwin." "I did not create the invitation, no. But you understood it, eventually, and you brought everyone here." "Yes." "Why?" "Because the truth had to be placed in one room." Hale laughed. It was a short, unpleasant sound. "You think this proves everything," Kramer said. "It proves enough." "No." Hale looked at Wolfe. "You have a ledger." "Yes." "You have old letters." "Yes." "You have testimony from a frightened accountant." "Yes." "You have a man who disappeared for 24 years." "Yes." "And you expect a jury to believe all of it?" Wolfe nodded. "Eventually." "Yes." Hale leaned forward. "Where is the original evidence?" Wolfe smiled. "Which evidence?" "The evidence Grant left. The evidence you spent 24 years trying to destroy." "Where is it?" Wolfe opened the black ledger to the final page. Hale's expression changed. "Yes." "That is impossible." "No." "Where?" Wolfe looked at Edwin Carter. "Mr. Carter?" Carter reached into his coat. He removed a small envelope. It was old, yellow. Its edges were worn, but across the front was the closed-eye emblem. He placed it on Wolfe's desk. Hale stared at it. Wolfe did not touch it. "This," he said, "is the missing contract." Kramer leaned closer. "The original?" "Yes." Helen looked at her father. "You kept it all these years." "I had to." "Where?" "With me. All this time?" "Yes." Wolfe nodded. "That was the final piece." Hale stood suddenly. The officers moved. Kramer said, "Sit down." Hale ignored him. "You have no right to hold that," Kramer said. "You don't have any rights left that concern me." Hale looked at Wolfe. "That document is mine." "No." "It concerns my property." "No." "It was part of the trust." "No." "It was signed by Grant." Yes. Then it belongs to the estate. No. Then to whom? Wolfe's answer was immediate. To the person Grant named as the original beneficiary. Hale turned toward Edwin Carter. Carter did not move. Hale's face changed. You, Carter said nothing. You were supposed to be dead. I was. I saw you. You saw someone you believed was me. Hale stared. Carter said, point. Hale turned back to Wolfe. You knew. Yes. You knew Carter was alive before the invitation? Yes. How? The private reference. Hale's jaw tightened. The wording. Yes. The missing name. Yes. The invitation. Yes. You understood all of it. Eventually. Hale looked at Bell. You sent it. Bell nodded. Hale laughed again. You betrayed me, Bell said. You betrayed everyone. Hale looked at him. You knew what would happen. Yes. You knew Carter would return. I hoped. You knew I would come. That was the purpose. Hale stared at him, then at Wolfe, and finally at the invitation. For 24 years he had believed he had controlled the secret. Now he understood that the secret had been controlling him. Kramer took the envelope from Carter. He opened it carefully. Inside was the original trust agreement. The signatures were clear. Walter Grant, Edwin Carter, 2 witnesses and 1 additional signature, Victor Hale. Kramer read it, then read it again. He looked at Wolfe. This is enough. Wolfe nodded. More than enough. Hale said nothing. Kramer handed the document to one of his officers. Preserve this. The officer took it. Hale lowered himself into the chair. For the first time he looked old, not defeated, not yet, but old. The room became quiet. Wolfe closed the black ledger. The sequence is now simple, Kramer said. Let's hear it. Wolfe nodded. 24 years ago, Walter Grant discovered that Victor Hale was diverting assets from the trust. Hale stared at the floor. Grant confronted him. Hale killed Grant. Yes. Hale then attempted to eliminate Edwin Carter. Carter survived. Grant had already created a safeguard. The invitation, yes. The recipient's name was deliberately omitted. Yes. Because Carter had to recognize the private reference. Yes. The invitation therefore served 2 purposes. Kramer waited. First, it gave the rightful beneficiary a way to recognize the trust without exposing his identity. Wolfe raised 1 finger. Second, it gave the guilty party a reason to reveal himself. He raised a second. Mr. Bell sent the invitation. Bell nodded. He knew Hale would recognize the bait. Hale did. He began searching for the ledger. Yes. He frightened Reed. Yes. He approached Carter. Yes. And finally he came here. Wolfe looked at Hale, because he believed the fortune was about to be claimed. Hale said, I believed the evidence was about to be destroyed. Wolfe smiled. That is even better. I looked at the invitation. One thing still bothers me. Wolfe glanced at me. Only one? Why did the footprints at Harcourt end in the center of the stage? Kramer looked interested. So do I, Reed answered. I made them. I turned. You? Yes. To make anyone searching the theater believe there was a hidden performer. Wolfe nodded. It served another purpose. What? The footprints directed attention to the worn floorboard, the brass plate. Yes, and the plate pointed toward the records. Correct. The music, Helen said quietly. It was Grant's unfinished composition. I looked at her. My father told me about it. Wolfe nodded. The melody was chosen because Carter would recognize it. And the audience? Those were people connected to the original transactions. Bell, yes. Reed, yes. Helen, yes. Others were descendants of witnesses, employees and investors. And Hale watched them from the balcony. Wolfe looked at him. Yes, Hale said. I needed to know who had the documents. Exactly. The observation chamber. Yes. The balcony. Yes. The music. Yes. The invitations. Yes. The incomplete ending. Yes. I smiled. So the entire theater was a trap. Wolfe corrected me. Not the theater. The audience. Exactly. Kramer walked to the window. He stood there for a while. Then he turned. Wolfe. Yes? I've got one question. Ask, why did Hale wait 24 years? Wolfe looked at him. Because he believed the evidence was incomplete. The contract? Yes, he thought Carter had it. Correct. So why didn't he kill Carter when he had the chance? Because Carter had already arranged for copies to exist. Hale looked up. You knew, Wolfe nodded. Yes, the Black Ledger. Hale's face tightened. Wolfe continued. The ledger contains references to 3 copies. Where? One with Carter? One? The second was in the Harcourt room. The room we found, yes. And the third? Wolfe looked at me. Goodwin. I reached into my pocket. I had found that morning inside the hollow back of the old ledger. A thin folded sheet. I placed it on Wolfe's desk.
Hale stared.
What is that? The third copy. Hale's face went blank. Kramer took it. That's enough. Wolfe nodded. It always was. By 2 o'clock the police had removed Hale. Bell remained. He looked exhausted. Kramer stood over him. You're not leaving town. Bell nodded. I understand. You'll make a full statement. Yes. And you'll testify. Yes. Kramer looked at Wolfe. You satisfied? Wolfe considered the question. Intellectually. Kramer snorted. That's all I get? Would you prefer an emotional certificate? No. Then you have everything necessary. Kramer picked up his hat. He stopped at the door. One thing. Wolfe looked at him. That $1 million. Yes? Who gets it? Wolfe looked toward Edwin Carter. Mr. Carter. Carter shook his head. No. Kramer frowned. The legal beneficiary is you. I know. Then. Carter looked at his daughter. I don't want it. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. Why? Because Grant didn't build it for me. Then for whom? Carter looked at Helen. For the people he wanted protected. Wolfe nodded. That is consistent with his final instructions, Kramer said. Final instructions. Wolfe opened the original agreement. The trust assets are to be divided among the descendants of those harmed by the fraudulent transfers, with the remainder assigned to charitable foundations. Kramer stared. So nobody gets $1 million. Then what was all this about? Wolfe looked at the invitation. The promise of a fortune, which wasn't really a fortune. It was, just not his. Correct. Kramer smiled. Grant was a clever man. Yes, you approve. I approve of cleverness. Kramer put on his hat. Good. He opened the door. Because I think you and Grant would have gotten along. Wolfe looked offended. I have never met him. That's why. Kramer left. The room slowly emptied. Reed went with Kramer. Bell remained to finish his statement. Helen stayed beside her father. Edwin Carter looked toward the orchids. They're beautiful. Wolfe looked at him. They require discipline. Carter smiled. So did Grant. Grant required several things, such as better bookkeeping. Carter laughed. It was the first time I had heard him do it. Helen rose. Miss Wolfe. Yes, thank you. Wolfe waved one hand. Your gratitude is unnecessary. You saved my father. No. Wolfe looked at her. Your father saved himself 24 years ago. Then you helped him. That is more accurate. She smiled. Goodbye, Mr. Wolfe. Goodbye. When they had gone, the office became quiet again. Wolfe sat back. I gathered the papers, the invitation, the ledger, the photograph, the old trust, the third copy, all of it. I put them into a neat stack. Then I looked at Wolfe. So, we solved it. Yes, the fortune is accounted for. Yes, Hale is finished. Apparently Bell will testify. Yes, Reed is safe. Yes, Carter is alive. Helen knows the truth. Yes, the trust will finally be distributed. I leaned back. That makes one thing. What? I still don't know why you accepted the case. Wolfe looked at me. You brought me the invitation. It contained a puzzle. The $1 million? No. The missing name? The closed eye? No. I waited. Wolfe looked toward the orchids. The invitation was written so that the right person could recognize it without being named. Yes. And the wrong person would reveal himself by claiming it. Yes. So? Wolfe closed his eyes. The puzzle was not who owned the fortune. Then what? Who believed he owned it? I smiled. That was Hale. Yes. The whole thing was designed to make him come forward. Yes. The $1 million was bait. Yes. The invitation was a trap. Yes. The missing name was the hook. Yes. And the man who took the bait came straight to us. Exactly. I looked toward the plant room. You know, Wolfe, I think Grant would have enjoyed this. Wolfe opened his eyes. Perhaps. Especially the invitation, yes. And the music. No, I laughed. You still hate the music. I do not hate it. You've been calling it an unnecessary complication for 3 days. It was unnecessary. Really? Yes. Why? Because the contract was sufficient. I stared at him. Wolfe. Yes, you missed the point. What point? The music brought them back. He considered that. Then he said, music can be useful. That's high praise. It is not praise. Of course. Wolfe pressed the bell. Fritz appeared. Yes, sir. Bring me lunch. What would you like? Wolfe thought for a moment. Roast chicken and vegetables, asparagus, peaches. Fritz nodded and left. I stood. Orchids? Wolfe looked toward the plant room. Yes, then that's that. Yes. I started toward the door. Archie, I turned. Yes? Wolfe's eyes moved to the cream-colored invitation. File that. Where? With the case papers. The invitation? Yes. Under what name? Wolfe considered it. Then he said, The $1 Million Answer. I smiled. That's not a bad title. It is accurate. I picked up the invitation. As I carried it toward the filing cabinet, I glanced once more at the blank space where the recipient's name should have been. For 24 years, that empty space had protected a secret. It had confused the curious, tempted the greedy, frightened the guilty, and finally brought the truth into Wolfe's office. I put it away. Behind me, Wolfe had already forgotten the case. His attention had returned to his orchids. That was Wolfe. For everyone else, $1 million had been the mystery. For Nero Wolfe, it had merely been the bait. The real question had always been much simpler. Who would come looking for it? Now we knew. And, as usual, Wolfe had been right.